Hello, it's a nice day at the top of the Tour's final mountain finish, but not only was it raining heavily when we got here this morning, there's also a forecast of thunderstorms for later in the day. And at this point in the race, the weather might be the only thing that could get in the way of Chris Froome's serene progress to Paris. He judged his effort perfectly in yesterday's time trial, well down at the first checkpoint, comfortably ahead at the finish line.
Hopefully I didn't leave too much out on the road today, but I imagine at this point, I mean, it's 2 days out from Paris. It's just going to be giving it everything we've got now, just these last couple of days to get the job done.
Chris, I imagine you knew every centimetre of today's time trial, and I imagine you know the same of the coming stages. You've reconnoitred them, you know what's coming.
I have. Tomorrow's a very tricky stage, a lot of tricky descents, and there's talk about thunderstorms during the race, so it's definitely going to have to be a stage where we stay right on our game. I mean, of course, it's fantastic that I open up my lead today, but we can't relax now. We can't relax and switch off. We've got to see this through right to the end.
Hard to imagine Sky and Chris Froome not seeing it through to the end from this position. 2 days from Paris, and he leads Bauke Mollema by 3 minutes 52. Mollema has 24 seconds over Adam Yates, and Yates 21 over Nairo Quintana. Romain Bardet is 20 seconds behind Quintana and 3 seconds ahead of Richie Porte, so it's packed from second place to sixth. In fact, there's a minute and 8 from Mollema to Porte, and exactly that amount from Porte to Fabio Aru in seventh. Alejandro Valverde, Louis Meintjes and Dan Martin complete the top 10. Adam Yates has 2 minutes 59 over Meintjes in the Best Young Rider competition, but he's already adjusted his ambitions to include a place on the podium overall in Paris. 146 concentrated kilometres of climbing today, taking the riders from Albertville along the shores of Lake Annecy and over a couple of warm-up climbs before the big two at the back end of the stage. The super category Monte de Bizan is 1,723 metres. After that, the riders revisit part of yesterday's time trial course and then hit the foot of the climb up to Saint-Gervais-Mont-Blanc. We should see attacks, perhaps not on the yellow jersey, but between the 5 or 6 men who think they can take one of the 2 other podium places. And we've got the whole stage live for you, so let's get straight over to Ned and David in the commentary box.
Thanks very much, Gary. They're continuing to trundle out of Albertville. The flag hasn't dropped just yet. They're just passing past the sites of the Olympic Games, the Winter Olympics in 1992. So the race hasn't got underway, but when it does, we're expecting it to be fast and furious. An uncategorised climb straight from the off today, David. Yeah, it's horrible. It's 7 kilometres at nearly 8% average, which at this point in the race, we're going to see 80% of the peloton in big trouble, I think. Now, another feature of today is that we've drawn back the curtain, and just to prove that we're actually in France and not locked away in a cubbyhole somewhere in London, look at the view we've got today. You can almost see it. That is the highest mountain in Europe, Mont Blanc, shrouded in cloud cover today. And that could well be a feature of today's racing because the forecast is bad. There is every chance that those mountains will be echoing to the claps of thunder that have been predicted by the weathermen later on in today's stage. And we've had remarkably little rain. It rained in Cherbourg, and it rained heavily, of course, on that summit finish in Andorra. But other than that, I can't really remember too many wet days on this tour. No, not at all. In fact, for the peloton, for the riders, it's been probably one of the better tours. I mean, there was a lot of wind at the beginning, but the temperatures been reasonably moderate the whole time. We haven't had lots of plus 30 days, so that's going to have helped massively the riders because it's often the heat, and either the heat or rain that really does exhaust the peloton. There's a lovely tribute to the late and sadly missed Laurent Fignon. And that's the scene at the front of the peloton. Christian Prudhomme's car just controlling the pace, and the flag hasn't dropped just yet. But as we look at Rafa Majka, who could seal the deal today, and will be hoping to do just that and win the polka dot jersey. Don't forget the green jersey has already been won. Peter Sagan just needs to finish the bike race to claim his 5th green jersey. But Rafa Majka, well, if he gets in the breakaway today, and if he were to take maximum points and Thomas de Gendt take none, then after the second climb today, that jersey would be his. However, next time we get a glimpse of Moto 1 and see which riders are represented at the very front at the moment, Thomas de Gendt is there. You can see him. There's a little cluster of Lotto Soudal riders just to the right of the car, sorry, the left of the car, and de Gendt is alongside Galopin. So it looks like Thomas de Gendt's going to try and make a game of this and give us a race.
Well, we got a good indication yesterday of him recovering. He'd had a couple of bad days, and they're finishing 6th in the time trial yesterday clearly shows that he's coming good again. So that will have given him a fresh motivation to go for it, chase his jersey. And I mean, he's got nothing to lose now, and if he's feeling good, he can go for it. And because it's only between him and Micah really now.
There he is, the Lotto Soudal rider with the black helmet. Oh, there we are, right on cue. Slightly unshaven shape of Thomas de Gent, and he clearly wants to get up the road and attack today. Marcel Seeberg and Tony Galopin, and a little glimpse of Dan McClay, the sprinter for Fortuner Vital Concept, who is going to be riding in Paris at this rate. He's survived the Pyrenees, he's survived most of the Alps, got 2 hard days. Then he might take his chances on the Champs-Élysées alongside Marcel Kittel, Andre Greipel and the rest of them, and in the absence of Mark Cavendish, of course. Now we're hearing that Joaquim Rodriguez has punctured in the rollout, but the last time we saw the back of the peloton, we saw him just getting back on. Remember Chris Froome doing that in 2013 when he went on to win the Tour de France. On the very first stage, he had a mechanical or a puncture of some description.
A little bit of a tumble, I think it was, coming through
in the end. Yeah,
the neutral zone.
Yeah, fell.
That then resulted in a mechanical and bike change.
Doesn't crash so often these days. The man who used to be nicknamed Crash Froome, right on the bumper of Prudhomme's car in the yellow jersey. And the consensus is, amongst the race and those who are watching on, writing in the French newspapers, broadcasting in the Zone Technique here at the finish line, is that only a crash would separate this man from another Tour de France win, because his form's not going to collapse, is it? I mean, he might have a bad day, but to lose the amount of time he'd have to seems very, very unlikely now.
Far from it. Would have to be a big shock, because the performance he did in the time trial yesterday was simply a tour de force. He's shown that he's got stronger through the race, or everyone else has got weaker, but contrary to his first time trial where he was beaten well, I'd say, by Tom Dumoulin, it wasn't so close. Tom Dumoulin fairly dominated that time trial. Contrary to this one yesterday, he dominated Tom Dumoulin. So that just goes to show, and he said it from before the race, that he planned to, the 3rd week was where he wanted to be stronger. So if we're seeing that happening, and he's actually ticked those boxes, and it's a reality, then we could see even more impressive Chris Froome the next 2 days than we have done up to now.
After Tom Dumoulin's win in the first individual time trial, the assumption was, we were widely talking about the almost certainty in our eyes that Tom Dumoulin would win Olympic gold in Rio in the time trial. We almost forgot that Chris Froome would be a player, and on the evidence of yesterday, the battle between those two for Olympic gold will be fascinating, and it probably does whittle down to those two realistically.
I think it does, and although Tom Dumoulin said after the time trial yesterday there are still some marginal differences he can make, some little mistakes he'd made, he said they didn't add up to 20 seconds. So he was fair and square beaten, and he accepts that. But at the same time, he hasn't had to deal with the stress, the 3 weeks of stress of racing GC, which Chris Froome has, although he seems to manage it very well. Tom Dumoulin's had a relatively chilled out, let's say. He just gets to do what he wants. The time trials, obviously, he was always going to go hard, but he could choose the other days he wanted to.
It looks like it's going to be a day off for Julian Alaphilippe. He's at the back. Most unlike him not to want to attack. He's been so impressive, hasn't he? That is the Albaville stronghold, otherwise known as Fort Marchand. These days, it is private property, I understand. Oh, I've got my forts wrong. I thought that was Fort Marchand. But this whole area is littered with fortifications going back mostly to the 18th century.
No, that it's the Viard stronghold, so you were right.
A little bit later than I said, though. That was they started to build that in 1875 to keep the Italians out. A remarkable statistic that's doing the round is that so far on this Tour de France, no stages have been won by either a Frenchman, a Spaniard or an Italian. And we think that's the first time, certainly in the Tour de France, but in all Grand Tours, that's ever happened, should that be the case all the way to Paris.
And it's that really does show how this modern sport is different to the traditional makeup. It's always been those Latin countries, if you like, that have been the leaders, and now it really is. Well, I see Chris Froome, Brit, Adam Yates, Brit, Australian up there, and it's a bit the Anglo-Saxon world, the Anglophone world really is at the forefront these days.
Well, there's sunshine on the peloton in Albertville. Steve Cummings has even undone his jersey. It's nice and warm down there. Not so warm up top. So high teens the temperature where we are today. The top of the final climb of the day, Le Betex. It's not particularly high, and it's not even on Mont Blanc. As we showed you the view out of our window in our commentary position, we're actually looking at Mont Blanc. So it's a slightly confusing name, Saint-Gervais-Mont Blanc. The climb is known as Le Betex. It's 9.8 kilometers in length and has an average gradient of 8%. It's a Cat 1 climb, so it's not a big alpine beast of a climb. It's not a super category climb for the finish today. That said, there is a super category climb, and it's the Monte de Bizanne. Ever raced that?
No, I don't think so. It
Doesn't ring a bell.
doesn't ring a bell.
Well, it's 12.4 kilometers in length, and it's at 8.2%. So that is a proper effort. And they go over that with 49.5k remaining.
Steve Cummings there on the back, and this goes to show how strong Steve Cummings is, because sitting at the back, last man, clearly last man as he is, out of choice as he normally is, it's because it's going to rip to pieces at peloton after kilometre 0 once the attacks go normally, and he's got to have the confidence to be able to pick through all those riders, and because it's most riders, you see sprinters are there at the front and they're about to start now, and if the road narrows up, we'll see a lot of blocking going on from the teams that don't want to, from the Team Sky, BMC, that sort of thing. But this first wave is likely to be the move that works, and it is Thomas de Gendt that's forcing it immediately.
Well, no surprise, that move was telegraphed. George Bennett has got on his wheel from Lotto Jumbo. It looks like Nathaniel Bahani is in the move as well. This first move, Cofidis rider Dani Navarro. Now, he's a player in the King of the Mountains competition. He's in 4th place with 69 points.
Mike has just moved behind, so immediately he's realised the danger of this.
Marcus Burkhardt from BMC, I think, is the man from their team. So that's the first move. Tony Martin is getting involved, and another rider from Giant Alpecinas.
It's Laurence Tendam, I think.
Yeah. Fortuné Vital Concept. We've got a couple of riders going.
Warren Barguil decided not to move, or he probably was, then saw Laurence Tendam covering this initial move, so he's withdrawn quietly back into the peloton to await the next moves. And now you'll see the Sky trying to block the road slightly. They're trying to block the edges. Pantano goes.
Yep.
So it's the usual suspects, which is what we expected. There's only a small group of riders that are capable of attacking at this point in the race who are not on GC, and we're seeing them all move in these first attacks. As I've said before, there won't be many tactics involved in this. It's all on sheer strength.
Astana have placed a rider up the road, as they tend to. That is Dani Navarro from Cofidis. Lamprey there. Is that Rui Costa? There's George Bennett, Bahani, Burkhardt, polka dot jersey of Rafa Majka in that first group, and this is a little chase group on the road now. Also with about 7 or 8. Yeah, I thought it was Rui Costa, Laurence Tendam, Tony Martin. So some big names. And there's a Cannondale rider as well.
Roland.
Pierre Rollands up the road. Brice Fayou is at Orica Bike Exchange.
Michael Matthews.
He was towards the front, wasn't he, Michael Matthews? A few stage winners.
So again, that's not a bad move by Orica Bike Exchange. They know they're very limited to how they can help Adam Yates on a stage like this, because they haven't got a team made of climbers. So what they do have, if they're feeling good, they need to set them off the road ahead, so that once this gets all whittled down here at the back, once the race really starts, there will still be an Orica Bike Exchange rider for Adam Yates ahead, because most of them will be dropped once Team Sky start to set their usual rhythm. But as you can see now, they're blocking the road. Team Sky, the road's narrow enough for them just to shut down and deter attacks.
Lars Bak, Brian Coquard and Steve Cummings at the rear of the peloton, and Thomas de Gendt is just forcing the pace and making sure that this one sticks. But he's got Rafa Majka in that little group, so it's something that Rafa Majka had to do. He could not allow Thomas de Gendt to get up the road and sweep up the mountain points available out there today. There are 60 points available today, 50 tomorrow, and 1 on stage 1. So there are still 111 points available at this juncture in the race. And the first opportunity is the Cat 1 Col de la Fauclade de Montmartre. That's with 103.5k remaining. They start to climb that climb at 113.3. They're climbing now, but this isn't a categorized climb at all. As you were saying, David, this is 7.5 kilometers in length, and it's steep, but no mountain points available.
So it's about 10 riders chasing. Seems like approximately 2 groups of 10 riders now. But Thomas de Gendt, he's not asked anybody to help yet. He's forcing this move forward on his own. which is interesting, would indicate that he's feeling very strong and maybe working more in favour of Tony Galopin today. We'll see. We'll know soon enough. If he's sprinting for the points, then we'll know he's chasing the climbers jersey, and Tony Galopin is going to try his best on the stage.
It does look like De Gendt is on domestic duty here for his team leader, notionally. Otherwise, it's a pretty strange way to go about it, because you'd have to hold something in reserve to try and make sure that you get your objective of the day, and that's mountain points. He starts the day 83 points behind Rafa Majka, so I wonder if he's actually given up on the idea of getting the polka dot jersey. Certainly Majka's presence in that group would suggest it's going to be next to impossible for Thomas De Gendt to do anything about it. There's the group with Roland and the second Fortuner Vital Concept rider.
They are approaching slowly, so... Sepulveda.
Yeah, I think it's Sepulveda,
Yeah.
the Argentinian rider from Fortuner Vital Concept. He's a climber, so that would make sense on a day that features 1, 2, 3, 4 categorised climbs, and this first uncategorised climb.
So it's interesting to see here, if you look at the front of the peloton, all the riders covering it have got riders up the front. So you've got Koffi's rider, Giant Alpecin, you have Sagan, Tinkoff, obviously Sky, Lotto. So they all have teammates in that move. So now they just want to block this road and make sure that move is a success. And so that's normally what happens when a road is like this, and at this point in the race, they can just shut it down and prevent attacks now that they're satisfied with the move that's been created ahead.
Another one of the forts in this part of the Savoie. This one is the Fort de Tamier, built into the side of this cliff face. Even though most of these forts have a history that dates back sometimes as far as the 17th century, most of them built in the 19th century, they all found a use and a purpose in the Second World War and played their part there.
This one was built in 1876 for the French army, so it's actually relatively recent by most of the stuff we've seen.
So 1 minute and 50 seconds, that's the advantage that the breakaway has now. Natnael Bahani, George Bennett, Lotto Soudal with their 2 riders, Danny Navarro from Cofidis. Michael Cherel, I think, has gone clear. There are 20 riders up the road. Lawrence Tendam from Giant Alpecin. Didn't quite get a strong sense of who that Tinkoff rider might be, but pretty soon we'll have an idea of exactly who is in the breakaway group. It's certainly gone, though. The peloton appear happy with the constitution of that move, and they are, as you can see, allowing the time gap to stretch right out. So the first attacks of the day have stuck, and the peloton is pretty pleased now with the pace that they can ride at least over the first couple of climbs before we anticipate the attacks starting. Robert Kieselowski is the Tinkoff rider, we now understand, in the company of Alexei Lutsenko as well from Astana. 20 riders up the road, they've got an advantage of over 2 minutes now. Welcome back. 140 kilometres to go, and the breakaway have a 3.5-minute advantage. The first attack of the day was by Thomas De Gendt and Tony Galopin. He dragged the polka dot jersey of Rafa Majka and around about 18 other riders, we understand, with him, and that group has formed. Now, one of the riders in that breakaway is a stage winner on the Tour de France. In fact, a number of them are, but Michael Matthews has made the break today, and he's up the road, and his director sportif, Matt White, I think is on the other end of the phone and can talk to us. Matt, can you hear me?
Yeah, good morning, guys.
Hello, good morning. Yeah, it does feel like the morning, doesn't it? We're just about into the afternoon here in France. It's going to be a long old day for Michael Matthews. Was that his ambition at the beginning of the day? Did he fancy getting in the break? Was that pre-planned?
Yeah, it was definitely planned to have someone in the breakaway today, and Michael was not your normal sprinter on many fronts, and he cruised through this last week of the Tour. And look, the next 2 days are crucial to supporting out in the 8th, and it's always good to pop someone in the breakaway for whatever could happen later in the afternoon.
Matt, what are you expecting to happen? It's, I mean, obviously, Adam's in one of those rare positions where I think he's every right just to defend that podium as much as possible. He doesn't need to go on the offence from the slightest. Is it simply going to be a case of waiting for him?
Yeah, it will be until the last climb, I think. The way Sky ride this afternoon, we were just jotting down the numbers there in the breakaway just before you spoke. Look, there's no one seriously dangerous for general classification there. So Sky, they're not even riding. Anyone's riding at the moment. So I'll think after I let that break go to maybe 7 or 8 minutes, and maybe even more, and then just gradually keep them there. And later in the afternoon, you have a race between those guys up front, and then I think on the last climb of the day, the key GT guys. And I think with Adam, we're just going to play it quiet, see what we notice with other key GT guys, and if the opportunity rises, then we strike and we try to get time on Mollema and the others.
Nice. Does Adam know these climbs? Did you manage to get recon? Because I suppose when you're going in not as an absolute favourite, you wouldn't do the recon that perhaps Team Sky, etc. do. But I know you guys do some of that. Does he know the last climb?
He's done these next 2 days from start to finish.
Oh, amazing.
Wow. Wow. Well,
Yeah,
who do you...
one of our sports directors drove the first, because it is a long stage, the recon. So Lorenzo took the boys here before the Dauphiné. They did the individual time trial, and then they rode the first half of the climb and got out and rode the second half of the climb. And they did the same thing for tomorrow's stage. So Adam is familiar with these two stages.
Matt, what's he been like, Adam Yates, to work with over the last 3 weeks? It's been fascinating how, 23 years of age, he's never been in this position in a Grand Tour before, but he just looks, his public face is that nothing has fazed him. He's taken everything in his stride, even a collapsing inflatable arch, for heaven's sake. I mean, what's he been like in the hotel? Is that the way he is? Does it marry up with his private face, so to speak? Is that the man you know?
Yeah, it certainly does. What you see is what you get with Adam. And I suppose the biggest challenge for him, and it's something that is not natural to him, but he's obviously gained a lot of experience to handle it this week, it's just the media circus that is the Tour de France. Now, Adam would rather people just leave him alone so he can just race bikes. But, when you are coming top 3 in the world's biggest bike race, you've got the white jersey on, you've got a lot of media commitments, and he's handled the pressure. And, every day staying after the race, doing podium, doing presentations, doing control. He's been arriving a lot later to the hotel than others, but he's just got on with the job. And I suppose that's a big compliment to his background and his grounding as a kid.
Well, brilliant. Thanks so much for taking the time, Matt, and good luck today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Big day today, but I'm very confident Adam's in a good place at the moment.
Brilliant. Speak soon.
Cheers, Matt. Good luck on the road today.
Bye,
Stay
guys.
safe. Thank you very much. Matt White calling it like it is. I mean, we kind of knew that about Adam Yates, but it's interesting to hear from inside the camp, so to speak, that is, in Matt's words, what you see is what you get. He is so wise beyond his years, isn't he? It's as if he's never been anywhere else other than in a podium place on the Tour de France. He's kind of born for it.
I think he's just grounded, and as Matt White said, it's a credit to his upbringing, really, that he's like that, because the fact he's more interested in the bike racing than he is the media circus says a lot about him, because often that's not the way.
Well, I know that his mother Susan will be watching. She's been following her boy's progress all the way this year. So, Susan, if you are watching, I think he's in a pretty happy place right now. And if that was an individual time trial, the ride of his life, the first one, I think yesterday's wasn't far off that as well. That was another great performance from Adam Yates. But he's not the only rider contesting these podium places, David. It has suddenly become, all right, it's not the battle for the yellow jersey that we might have preferred, but in its own way, it's fascinating and quite hard to predict as well. They are so tightly grouped together. And what you have to do more than anything else is look at the trajectories that they're embarked on at the moment and whether they are going forwards or backwards. Certainly you'd put Aru and Port into the forward-moving sort of bracket, and Quintana and Mollema possibly going the wrong way.
Yeah, for sure, but I mean, it is very rare to arrive at stage 19 in the Tour de France and have second to sixth place over 1 minute and 8 seconds. And that's tiny in the grand scheme of things, especially in stages as heavy and difficult as today and tomorrow. And they'll all be aware of that, and I'm sure that's one of the reasons they will ride a semi-cautious race for most of today. I mean, it would be quite a surprise to see any of these GC riders launching an offensive early on, because they'd just be opening themselves up to weakness, if you like, if they're caught by the Sky machine. But no, I'd definitely say Richie Port's moving up. I'd say Bardet's looking good. Adam Yates is solid. He seems to be always there, and we saw 2 days ago that he was the third best of the GC riders up there. Richie Port and Chris Froome, and then it was Adam Yates bringing in the rest. So doing that on stage 17 is yeah, I think that goes to show that he's not got much to worry about the next few days. Although it still is, he's in a position where anything can happen. We saw that last year with Geraint Thomas, just a few days from the finish.
Very different circumstances as well. We saw it on the Vuelta last year with Tom Dumoulin, that one bad day, you know, knocks you out of the leaders' positions, and you can you can tumble all the way down the standings with on one mountain. Actually, can do the damage, and deep into a Grand Tour, that's where you find out. And so, in some ways, the truest champions and the great riders, the riders like Alejandro Valverde, who consistently place so highly in Grand Tours, what they do is when they are on a bad day, they're able to limit their losses and not fall catastrophically away like TJ van Garderen did the other day.
No, exactly. That's you're right. That's you can't do that. You can't just throw it in. And the older you are, and the more experienced you are, you learn to mitigate the situation and not throw in the towel. But often with the younger riders, also, it's the first time they've found themselves in this situation at the end of a Grand Tour. It was Tom Dumoulin's first time at the Vuelta being a leader's jersey. Same with Geraint last year at the Tour, although he was in domestic duty, but he did find himself in 4th overall a few days from the end, and then had that one bad day. And the same, Adam Yates, we hope that doesn't happen, but it wouldn't be a shock if it did, because he is so young and he is in such a rare position. Astana moving off the front. Just Astana making a move off the front of the bunch there.
There was a lot of talk before that move went, actually. It was almost as if the Astana rider had gone to the front and actually asked, we've seen that before, haven't we, asked what the reaction would be if they go, and it did look like 3 Astana riders had just gone clear of the main peloton. So that's the shot we need right now. And it'd be good to get back to the front of the yellow jersey group and see what's going on there. Vincenzo Nibali is one of them, and there's a lot of action on the radio. This isn't an attack. There's certainly no reaction. So what is it?
No, well, I think they're looking for Aru. I think maybe they do have a move planned, but their leader isn't there at the moment. And if that was the case, it's surprising that he's blocked slightly Aru behind.
With the white helmet.
So, and Joaquim Rodriguez is going, so he's going to ask.
So Paulo Tirolongo.
Joaquim Rodriguez, they are winding up slightly, so you know what's happened? They've gone to the front to start riding, and everyone's just let them go. So sometimes that'll happen. The 3 are starting... They're like, let's go. So the 3 riders have gone to the front, and because all those riders see at the front of the peloton, they're all blocking for their teammates ahead. None of them are interested in speeding up. So the Astana riders have gone to the front to set a tempo, and just ridden off, and nobody's taken their wheel. And so
now what happens?
So now these guys have got to make a decision whether they carry on. They should, because this is now the dream scenario. If they can get a big gap and Aru's feeling strong enough, he jumps across to them. Now, this is a very rare situation we're seeing now, and I don't think I've ever seen it. And they're stuck as to know what to do, whether to forge on or hope that somebody in the peloton will take their wheel and join in. Joaquim Rodriguez has, but so far nobody else.
Furrowed brows and confused looks, even from Alejandro Valverde, who has half a smile playing across his face there. Bauke Mollema and Romain Bardet both look slightly puzzled as the camera just came past them. Interesting phase of the race.
Well, this is good, because it's what deep down we hoped would happen, but because of the way the race has been, most of the Tour de France, we haven't seen any of these big offensives from other GC teams, and now we have Astana announcing what they're doing. They want to make this race hard today. To make it hard, they want to sit on the front and set a high tempo and whittle down the peloton, but the peloton doesn't want to go with them, so they're now riding up there without the peloton on their wheel and their leader behind. But
it's an opportunity. It wasn't what they planned, but the plan B might just be extremely rewarding.
No. This could be brilliant. And look, they're just baffled as well that they're just being allowed to ride off. So now they're just going to slowly ride the pace, realise they have a gap, and now we have a very weird but exciting prospect.
Well, let's just reiterate that Fabio Aru is a rider who's coming into form. He sits in 7th place, 6 minutes and 8 seconds down in the general classification. So that's one reason why he's not being tracked down. He is of no immediate threat to the yellow jersey of Chris Froome. That's a big time gap. And none of the other Astana riders are GC players whatsoever. Tanel Kangert is at 42 minutes. So it doesn't really matter Team Sky greatly. But it would threaten all the other teams. And it's an excellent potential launch pad for Fabio Aru, wherever he is. As another rider just goes across to make that group of 5.
The Katusha rider coming across. So now we have a very strange situation coming across.
Were there more Astana riders moving there?
Maybe. I mean, if we have the whole Astana team now jumping across, then we're going to have something that we've hardly ever seen in cycling.
Yes,
we have
2 more.
riders,
and it's still not Fabio Aru either. Neither of those is Fabio. It's Jakob Fuglsang and Diego Rosa, I think.
This is plain bizarre, but I like it. This is good because the peloton's still not reacting, because none of those riders at the front want to move. They don't want this climb to be hard, because if it is, they're in for an infernal day. It means they'll be off the back chasing the time delay. So they're trying to block it. Now these riders are squeezing through. So that's 5 Astanas ahead now. A Katusha and Joaquim Rodriguez, not just any Katusha, and there's a Cofidis rider on the back of them. So it's yeah, we now have 5 riders with a gap, 5 riders from Astana. And Joaquim Rodriguez there. So now it's launching. So now Movistar reacting. Saga. So now the race begins.
Right, keep your eyes on the yellow jersey and his team, and what their reaction is. Roman Kreuziger is going. I think Nairo Quintana has got is on the move, and he's going. And certainly Movistar are represented with numbers. Winner Anacona is trying to get across to this Team Astana team time trial, essentially up this mountain now.
So now this is what Astana wanted to happen. They wanted it to start to react. They're going to now push forward, and they want to make this as difficult as possible and drag the day out, because if they want Aru to move up and stand a chance of getting on the podium, they have to fatigue everybody so that he can launch his big attack. Now Movistar are interested in this as well now.
Jon Izagirre and Winner Anacona have gone. There's a rider from Orica Bike Exchange.
Maybe Albacini, I think.
Possibly Albacini, maybe Daryl Impey. And don't forget, this isn't the breakaway group. They're 4 minutes and 26 seconds up the road, and they've got an Astana rider there as well, in Alexei Lutsenko.
It's Aru, I think, now moving behind, so joining up at the front of the race.
Interesting time. So which riders are in most danger right now of this move? Would you say Romain Bardet and Adam Yates and...
Adam Yates on his strength, I mean, Team Sky will control it at some point as it starts moving, as it does, because they don't want to have 5 Astana riders up there and open themselves up to the prospect of Aru launching an offensive mid-stage and really creating havoc. Now, the thing that Team Sky have on their side is that their team is so strong, and everybody knows that, and that's why they've had to launch this so early, because in order to stand any chance of creating a bit more randomness in the race, they have to put Team Sky in a bit more of a complex situation. This is what you'd expect to normally see from the Alberto Contador tactics. This is very much how he races. He launched his whole team and then he bridges across at some point. But we can see this is going to turn this into a very, very demanding day.
Well, they are now, both the breakaway and the yellow jersey peloton, descending from that uncategorized climb, the Col du Tamier. They'll start to climb again at 113.3 k. That is the start of the first categorized climb of the day, the Cat 1 Col de la Forclaz de Montmain. Nearly 10 kilometers of climbing at just about 7% to come, so that's a real test, a Cat 1 climb. And we've got a really interesting race situation as we catch a glimpse of the yellow jersey. It's gone, and it's gone a lot faster and a lot harder and a lot earlier than anyone anticipated. If you thought it was going to happen on the final climb of the day, I'm pleased to say, think again. We've got a bike race on our hands. You're looking at the Chateau of Faverges, dates back to the 13th century, fell into ruin in the 19th century, and then it was turned into a working cotton factory, making muslin embroidery and silk weaving, etc. After that, it actually became a family house, bought up by the municipality. That's the situation from the air. This is a situation on the ground, and still Astana have virtually their whole team forcing the pace on the descent from that uncategorized climb, which kicked the day's racing off in fine fashion as well. So you can see how strung out it is, but some sort of sense of order has been restored, with Astana, the team, driving it on for the man with the white helmet in about 8th position on that train, and then Sky looking after the yellow jersey, and Movistar sitting on their wheel now. But the pace is going to be high, so anyone who thought it would be a fairly neutralised slog all the way to the final climb and then a GC race exploding, I think we need to think again. Certainly when we spoke on the phone to Matt White, and he was talking about Adam Yates' potential day of racing that he's got to negotiate, Matt White was predicting just that nothing would happen in the GC race until they got to the climb. But Aru obviously thinks differently.
Well, if they want to make a difference on the last climb, then they have to make the race hard for those pure climbers like Fabio Aru and even Zakharin, because we see Katusha up there riding as well. Joaquim Rodriguez was very vigilant when Astana started moving. He went up there, and now I think it's Angelo Vicioso who's in 3rd place there, as we see in the line out. And then we have another Katusha rider behind Team Sky, and then it's all the Movistar yellow helmets. So we have we can see the teams that are motivated to do something today. Movistar contributed immediately to that chase when everyone did spark onto what Astana were doing. Movistar contributed with Winner Anaconda, but then they stopped, and now they've just left it all in the hands of Astana. So I think this is a softening up by Astana to attempt to make the race so hard that it opens up opportunity to Aru that wouldn't if they set a steady tempo all day and allowed Sky to control it at will.
That's bad news for the breakaway. I mean, there are some riders, well, there's one rider really, Rafa Majka, who's not necessarily thinking about a stage win. He just wants to seal his polka dot jersey, but everyone else is up the road for a reason. Apart from Alexei Lutsenko, who is sitting on the back Astana. He's aware of what's happening further back down the road. He's not going to share the pacemaking at all in the breakaway group. He knows precisely what his function is, to wait for the GC race to catch him up. But you can see the advantages come down under 4 minutes, so they're not being given the kind of 10, 15 minutes that potentially you might have expected to get today.
No, not at all. I mean, I think they now risk being caught rather soon. It all depends. I mean, they'll now hear what's going on. Their team radios will have told them that Astana have launched a full chase behind, and hence why we're seeing them actually turn well. Often, once that break's gone, it's all a little bit laissez-faire, and everybody's not that interested. But at the moment here, we have Lutsenko is talking to BMC, explaining, I think, that the reason he's not riding. So
yeah, there you go.
So he's been told to contribute, and that's Amaury Monad, I think. Yeah. And and Lutsenko is like, well, I'm not. My team's chasing. Why would I do that? And Lutsenko is actually in a perfect position now, because although he drew the short straw a little, having to go with that first attack, so I'm sure that was in the team orders, and that is one of the most painful moves of the day, because you're not warmed up properly, and it's at the bottom of the climb, and it's stage 19. He's now got in there, and now he's avoiding the big chase behind, which will be equally painful and probably much longer. So although it was a short straw, it's ended up working out well for him.
Now, the weather forecast was predicting heavy thunderstorms this afternoon. They haven't materialised yet, and they may not materialise. As you can see, there's still plenty of sunlight in the valley through which they're passing. But that could be a factor today. If this is being raced hard over these climbs and particularly on the descents, David, and it does start to rain heavily, that's a proper dangerous moment for everyone in the bike race, and all these GC positions, including the yellow jersey himself, will have to be on full guard duty.
Well, it does, especially when you set off the day with tyres perhaps at higher pressures, because it is dry at the start. The tyre pressures are often one of the biggest contributors to crashes when it becomes wet, because you don't have the same traction if you're running the higher pressure that you would use on a dry road. And so you'll have a lot of riders that have the wrong pressures that risk crashing if it starts raining now. And that does open up another factor that they wouldn't have had to deal with if it didn't rain. And also the fact the rain is simply very uncomfortable. And if you're already having a bit of a bad day and mentally you're suffering a little weak, the rain and bad weather just makes you weaker.
Yeah, and also I would imagine if it's a full-on race, it's that much more dangerous as well.
Much more dangerous, and especially we have 2 races in. Now we have this race up here, what we're looking at, Pierre Rolland coming off, Pantano behind him, Thomas de Gent. So we have already 2 stage winners there from this year's tour, just coming through. They're racing for stage wins, and perhaps de Gent, he wants to chase the mountain points as well. Majka's doing that, but then everyone else the majority are racing for potential stage win. The likes of Navarro, who's missed out a couple of times now. Pantano, why not again? We've seen him in the last 2 mountain stages dominant. But then there's other riders like Lutsenko, who's on a domestique role, Tony Martin. I don't know, he's probably a bit of a mixture, just out there getting a good workload in preparation for the Olympics.
He hasn't done enough on this Tour de France, frankly, has he? That adventurous ride into Bern wasn't enough for him. He wants to do it again. And
then we have the BMC rider, Amaury Monad here, and then behind Majka you have Marcus Berghardt. They're very much up here to be able to help to Richie Porte and TJ Van Garderen.
So why aren't they sitting on like Lutsenko's do?
Because if they're caught now, they're useless. They'll just be fired out the back. So the reason they roll through now is to keep the gap up for as long as possible, because they want to stay ahead of the race for as much as possible. If they're back in the peloton at the speed Astana are going, the moment they hit the next climb, they'll be dropped. So their tactic now, and the same with Michael Matthews, is to just make sure, because they know they're only going to get half of the race or 3/4 of the race now at the front, they need to make it 3/4, not half.
Well, one race that is definitively over is the race for the green jersey. Peter Sagan not in a breakaway today. He has already won the green jersey. And Rui Costa is one of the riders in that group. Michael Matthews is just making a little point here and earning himself a few quid as well. Uncontested. He's the fastest man in a sprint in this group of riders who've gone up the road.
There's Rui Costa, third from the back there, George Benetton as well, and Lutsenko. a rider who is in this situation is going to profit off the fact that Lotto really want this, Micah really wants this, BMC are trying to drive it forward, and he'll just hide back there, which he's very good at, and let them do all the hard work, and then once it weakens, then if he's feeling good, that's when he'll move, because he's a 2 times Tour of Switzerland winner, so he can climb the big mountains. We haven't seen it really here, but that's not to say he's not on a good day today. We'll know soon enough, because this stage is so hard, there's no hiding.
Another competition that is as good as being sewn up by this breakaway move is the Baroudeur prize, the prize for the king of the breakaways, which I think is worth about 10,000 euros at the end of the race. Well, Rafa Micah leads that by some distance, and he's just applying a bit more hurt to the rider in second place in that competition. Alex Howes from Canada was in third. I think Thomas de Gendt is the rider in second place. So that's the scene at the front of the race. The yellow jersey group, at least. Confirmation that Matthews took the 20 points from Thomas de Gendt, with Emmanuel Buchmann from Bora Argonne 18 in third place.
So the time gap is somewhat stabilised now. It's hovering under the 4-minute mark, which goes to show how hard they're riding at the front of the race as well. But they've only got a few more kilometres left till they hit the next climb, and that's going to be interesting to see how much Astana force it over that. What I did notice when they came over that climb, the first climb, and Astana did turn it up slightly, a lot actually, Ian Stannard and Luke Rowe were there quite easily, so it just goes to show how strong they are, because they are the flat powerhouse, and they're the first 2 Sky riders you see there behind Astana, and the fact they're on a good day, obviously that's a massive benefit to Team Sky, because it saves them using their climbers for a little bit longer.
Astana clearly believe in Fabio Aru today. Very rare that you see such a concerted effort for a rider who, frankly, is in such a lowly position in the general classification. 7th place, 6 minutes down. But he's coming good, Fabio Aru. Got stronger and stronger, as we thought Nairo Quintana might in the 3rd week into the Alps. Well, it's not really happened for Quintana, but it is happening for Fabio Aru. As we look down at Lake Annecy, time trial here, of course, famously in 2009. And was the penultimate stage up to a mountaintop finish just near Lake Annecy in 2013, when Chris Froome won his first Tour de France. Vincenzo Nibali is having to work back on, so he's not part of the Astana train at the moment.
I wonder if he's going back either to get bottles
or for a chat.
I think for a chat, because often in this situation you don't want to use the radio because some teams might be listening in. Seriously? It has been known to happen. So if you want to really go and talk and have a secret conversation, you never do it on the radio. And Nibali will have assumed the role of road captain now in many ways, because of his experience and his respect within the team. And we saw he was one of the first riders to move in those 3 riders that went off on that climb. So I was just getting some mechanical and probably a little chat.
Yeah. There is a conversation happening as a little bit of lubrication gets applied to his bike. I think the primary reason was a tactical powwow. You can see Vincenzo Nibali at the back there in blue, just off the back of the peloton, as Team Astana lead them through this wholly irrelevant sprint point at Dussart. 3 minutes and 47, so it's basically a race at the moment in this section of today's stage between the 20 men up the road and a 5 or 6 man Astana team time trial. There are 3 men essentially riding against 20, and they're beginning to chip away at the advantage of the breakaway. Under 4 minutes, doesn't look like it's going to be a day for the breakaway to stay away all day. Fascinating race developing. Welcome back. Less than 113 kilometres. It's a short stage today, but it's going to be lightning fast if it's raced at the pace that they've set off at. 146 kilometres in total, and we're on the banks of Lake Annecy, looking at the beautiful castle of Châteauvieux. And that is the breakaway group. Pierre Rolland amongst them, and they are starting to climb now up the Col de la Fauclaz de Montmain. Pretty soon, the Astana-led breakaway, main peloton will be on their heels as well, as the advantage, where it's holding at around about 3 minutes and 40 seconds, being driven on, though, all the while by Astana. That's the race situation. Not much has changed since you went away. And just a little moment then we're going to take to remind you of the action still to come on this edition of the Tour de France, including Sunday's big finale and the third edition of La Course. Live coverage of La Course starting at 1 o'clock on Sunday, and we go all the way through to see the men onto the Champs-Élysées and the coronation of the yellow jersey and the 2016 Tour de France, all in one programme on Sunday. Danny Navarro, part of the breakaway group once again. He's been so combative the whole way through this Tour de France. Pierre Hollande up the road, Michael Matthews, Lawrence Tendam, and the polka dot jersey. Now his finish line as he rides up alongside Thomas de Gendt, who's his only realistic rival in the polka dot jersey competition. His finish line is up the road over the Col de la Fauclasse de Montmartre. They go over the top at 103.5 kilometres remaining. It's nearly 10 kilometres in length, this climb, and it's an average gradient of 6.9%. This will be familiar to many of you who've taken your holidays in the Swiss Alps. Lake Annecy features regularly, and so too do the climbs around Lake Annecy on the Tour de France. Perennial favourite over recent years. Came here in 2009 and in 2013 as well, the climb up to Annecy-Semnoz. And that was an occasion when Chris Froome was weakening in the third week on that particular race up that mountain. Thomas Voeckler, not a day for him to get up the road today. He is in the yellow jersey peloton, being driven on by Astana. There they are, with Luis Leon Sanchez doing most of the work and Andrei Grivko on his wheel. Matt Rendell, you've been having a little think about Astana and the way they've raced Grand Tours over recent years?
Well, it did make me think immediately of last year's Giro d'Italia, suddenly seeing that great big train of Astana at the front. And I remember Contador in one of the press conferences described the look of the mountain stages as basically an Astana team time trial with me hanging on the back. And it was an incredible team and an incredible ride. Contador won that edition of the Giro with two Astana riders, Fabio Aru and Mikel Landa, second and third. Astana won two sets of consecutive stages. First of all with Mikel Landa and then with Fabio Aru. They took second and third steps of the GC, and if you look at the team then and now, it featured Aru, Cangot Rosa, Luis Leon Sanchez and Paolo Tiralongo. Cataldo, Landa, Malacarni and Zeitz rode in the 2015 Giro. They're replaced here by Nibali, Fuglsang, Grivko and Lutsenko. Landa, of course, is here too, but with Team Sky, to whom Diego Rosa is apparently moving for next season. That'll be one of the highest profile moves of the summer, along obviously with Contador's move to Trek Segafredo.
And there's their rider who they've placed up the road, Alexei Lutsenko, who's not working at all in the breakaway group. He's been given a free pass, essentially, and he'll wait to see how the race develops further down the road. 3:34, so the advantage continues to come down. Caught a beautiful glimpse of the Chateau de Monton-Saint-Bernard just now on the banks of Lake Annecy. That is where St. Bernard himself was born in 1008. In the first castle that was built there. That castle that you saw a beautiful glimpse of was built much, much later, and the Monton family have lived there for many, many generations, including François de Monton, who was the lawyer who represented France at the Nuremberg trials, and he became the Minister of Justice in Charles de Gaulle's government as well. 8 kilometres to the top of the climb, and Rafa Majka is thinking about the 10 points available there that would extend his lead to an almost insurmountable, you would have to say, position vis-a-vis Thomas de Gendt. He's got 83 points advantage over Thomas de Gendt now. If he gets maximum points there, then, well, it's another hammer blow in that competition. The green jersey's sewn up. Many people think that the yellow jersey is sewn up. And possibly the polka dot jersey The white jersey of Adam Yates looks pretty secure as well. And it's unusual, isn't it, in the Tour de France to see so many of the competition so stable at this point and so seemingly decided?
Yeah, yes it is. I mean, the climber's jersey often is done. You fairly know by the middle of the final week what's going to happen to that. But the white jersey, again, it does tend to go a bit closer. And yellow jersey, it can go either way. But then the Sagan, we just know that before the race starts that he's going to win that one. So
Yeah. They tried to make a race of it, didn't they, in the green? Most notably, Mark Cavendish, actually. He was trying at the intermediate sprints, and so too were Marcel Kittel for a while. Greipel didn't seem too bothered. And the green jersey is the Sagan jersey.
Now, it will be interesting to see on this climb, now that they've started at the peloton with Astana chasing, is if they can continue to eat into that time gap. They've brought back 40 seconds now, I suppose, from when they started chasing, and that's been essentially the valley, if you like, in between the first climb and this one. But they've only got Luis Leon Sanchez, who's Grivko, and the red jersey of Angel Vicioso are the only three riders riding. And they'll have to go, ideally, they go over the top of this and continue eating into that, because in order for the race to be hard, they have to keep eating into that time gap.
This climb featured in the time trial in 2009, I'm pretty sure.
Maybe the bottom part, yeah, that's right. We did the first
you went over
2Ks.
a bit of it. That road looks incredibly familiar to me.
We did, and then we turned off and then went back down onto the valley road and
you
completed the lap.
Yeah.
I went so slow there.
Yeah.
I went fast in the flat.
The 2009 Tour, of course, where Bradley Wiggins finished 4th, and he didn't have such a good day in that time trial in Annecy. His form did crumble deep into the Tour de France, but he still finished 4th on that edition. Just denied a podium place, though, and principally the time he lost in this Annecy time trial was the reason why he didn't end up on the podium on that race. Your teammate at the time.
I think retrospectively he's been given 3rd place, if I'm correct in saying.
That is absolutely true. Quite correct. Lance Armstrong's record has been expunged. Fact of the matter is, though, he didn't have his opportunity to stand on the podium. Matt, the climb is called the Col de la Forclaz, and some people have pointed out that there are 3 climbs on this edition of the Tour de France. We've already been over one a couple of days ago in the Swiss Alps, and there are 2 Col de la Forclaz today. So it's not the same climb that they're doing 3 times. They've all got different little bits added on. This is the Col de la Forclaz de Montmartre, and after that it's the Col de la Forclaz de Kej. The first one we did in Switzerland was just called the Col de la Forclaz. What's this Forclaz business?
Well, it's just one of those place names that recurs over and over and over again. It comes from the Latin furcula, meaning little fork, you would never guess, which just describes a narrow pass between 2 mountains. Very common in Savoie and in French, Romanche and Italian-speaking Switzerland. There are at least 5 of them, I've found, 5 Col de la Forclaz in the departments of Savoie and Haute-Savoie in France. There seem to be 8 of them in the canton of Valais in Switzerland. We went over one of them 17 kilometres before the finishing stage, 17, on the way to Finot-Émosson. There are apparently 6 Col de la Forclaz in the canton of Vaud, the capital of which is Lausanne, and 4 of them in Grisons, which is the Romanche-speaking area in the easternmost bit of Switzerland. So, yeah, just one of those place names that goes over and over again. Did you know that there are at least 13 villages called Caldicot in England? Did you know that? I bet you didn't. I'll look that up.
That's a fact.
Well, if you woke up this morning with a thirst for knowledge about the Col de la Forclaz, you have had your thirst well and truly sated. There's not much else that human history has ever recorded about the word Forclaz.
While they're going uppy hilly, I've got another one for you. This is totally this has got nothing to do with today's stage.
Right.
But the etymology of Pendle Hill in Lancashire, right, only because they're going uppy hilly, right, is part Cumbric, part Old English, part Modern English, and the translation is hill, hill, hill. Right, I'm going.
Wow, we've drifted a long way from the race. Let's have a look at the race situation, because the effort being applied by Astana at the front is starting to have a real effect on the advantage of the breakaway group. They're riding hard. You can see all the jerseys have been unzipped. Andre Greipel is still there, so they haven't ripped the race to bits, but they're applying ever constant and steady pressure, and it's beginning to chip away at the advantage of the breakaway, hovering at around about 3 minutes for the 20 riders who have gone up the road. 108.7 kilometres remaining. There's going to be a battle for Rafa Majka at least, and the polka dot jersey at the top of the climb, and that comes at 103.5. Lars back from Lotto Soudal. He is at the back.
And you see how this, you see Steve Cummings just slowly moving up there. That's what he does at the back, and that's why you have to be so strong to do that. As riders are dropped, he's just popping up a place, and that's it. The peloton's starting to crack now.
Gaps appearing, and at the front, Angel Vicioso from Katusha has joined in the fun. So Astana and Katusha still riding full of intent. The sun's out at Lake Annecy. The threatened rain hasn't materialised just yet, and the good folk of the Savoie are celebrating the passage of the Tour de France. Astana with Luis Leon Sanchez still setting the pace, and the advantage for the breakaway is under 3 minutes now. 2:50. Don't know if that is her wedding date. If it is, it's a curious way to spend it. But the Tour de France caters for every taste. 106 kilometres to go then, so 2.5k to the top of the Col de la Fauclade de Montmartre. They're over the steepest section, but the gradient continues to push on up, and so too do Astana. What is actually the moment at which Aru will decide to attack? Is it predefined, David? Does he know? Is there a certain mountain, a certain climb that they want him to be, that he wants to be delivered to, or will he just see how it plays out with his domestiques? They've just got to go full gas for as long as they can, and then when they pop off, that's his moment. Is that as simple as that? Or?
Not really. They kind of mix it up, if you like. They'll see how the race unfolds. They couldn't have predicted that the group of 20 was going to go, who was going to go in there. They had to wait and see who was going to ride, whether people were interested, and they'll have had a few scenarios. And when that group of 20 went and the peloton wasn't interested and nobody else was going to chase, they decided if they wanted to make this race hard, because often for the climbers, in order for them to be able to battle it out properly tactically at the end of the race, they need to have whittled down the race massively beforehand. And so that's what Astana are doing. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, they're doing well at the moment with only 2 riders, Luis Leon Sanchez and Grivko, plus the Katusha rider of Angel Vicioso riding. And just the 3 of them alone have brought back over 1.5 minutes now on this group we're seeing here, this group of 20. So that's three riders chasing 20. And this group will start to get a little bit demoralised now, because they'll know that normally the group of 20 that went, they'd have got 10 minutes. Perhaps the stage winner would have come from this. It's now highly unlikely that the stage winner is going to come from this move. So that will demoralise them slightly. And they either need to make it a bit smaller and with a bit more committed and separate the strongest riders out of it. So at the moment, they're only really going as fast as the weakest rider in there, because they're rolling through. And also they'll have riders that are disinterested, and we can already see the BMC riders are struggling a little bit at the back, whereas they were driving before. Rui Costa has realised that he has to contribute. That's a Lamprey rider coming through. Thomas de Gent is still there at the front, driving it.
De Gent looks so strong on this tour, of course, taking his win at Chalais-Renard and Mont Ventoux stage in brilliant fashion. Thomas de Gent, and he's been on the move most days, hasn't he, one way and the other. Incredibly strong tour he's having.
He has, and
his time trialling's been great as well, placing high in both the individual time trials.
We have seen him do it before in years past when he was at his best, and it has been a while since we've seen him like this. So it's good to see, and it's been very much like these riders, the opportunistic riders, if you like. He's been taking each day as it comes, and he's been great one day, but then he's been tired the next, so he's just shut it down and gone to the Gruppetto. He started the time trial tomorrow, obviously realised immediately he felt good, so he's gone hard at it, finished 6th, which is a great result at this point in the race, well, in any Tour de France time trial, but to do it in the 3rd week on such a hard time trial just goes to show. And he was the rider today that set that break up, that went from kilometre 0 and set such a high pace for a prolonged period of time to really separate the strong riders out from the weak.
And he did it in a manner that was predicted by his teammate Greg Henderson last night on Twitter, who was rather enjoyably tweeting 5 facts that you might not have known about Thomas de Gent. And fact number 3 was, to get in the break, he sits at 500 watts for 5 minutes. Then he knows who holds his wheel will be strong enough to ride, and he will drop them later. And that's exactly what happened. That is precisely what happened today.
Hashtag tactics.
Fact number 2, by the way, is that Thomas de Gent never gets a massage, ever, because apparently he likes the tension in his legs. There we go. Stuff you didn't know about Greg Henderson's roommate. Thomas de Gendt. 1.5 kilometres to go until de Gendt may or may not show his hand in the polka dot jersey competition. It's the first mountain points of today's stage available. There are 111 left on the race. And at the moment, Rafa Majka has an 83-point lead. So if de Gendt were to do anything, frankly, Majka would have to get none over this climb. There are points available for the first 6 riders, and de Gendt would have to take all 10.
So going back to the Astana tactics, what they'd probably do here is use up Grivko, who's on the front, Luis Leon Sanchez, Agio Vicioso, let them get as close as they can before they blow. Because when they come off this, they've then got a further 25, 30 kilometres till the next climb. So that's a fair chunk of kilometres and time. So they don't really want to lose Luis Leon or Grivko before they get to the top of this climb, because then they can use them up on that valley through to the next climb, which is a Cat 2, 5.6 kilometres at 8%. And then that's probably when their climbers would start to drive it forward, to really lift it up even higher. And then after that climb, they have the long Montée de Bisson, which is, you'd expect, perhaps not them just to race it, to whittle it down like that, but maybe for Nibali, for them to really go deep, put a mass amount of pressure on the peloton, and then Nibali maybe to attack off the front if he's feeling good, and then for Aru to then go later and bridge up to him, would be the sort of the classic tactic to do in that sense. But that's all good said and done, but you need a massive amount of horsepower from your team to be able to do it, and you need a rider like Nibali at his best to set it up, because Aru's at 6 minutes from Chris Froome at the moment, so it's not Team Sky's and Chris Froome's interest to jump immediately after him if he goes. It's up to the riders in front, the Richie Porte, Bardet, Quintana, Yates, Mollema, who want to protect their positions. So that will all play into the hands of Team Sky if Astana are really launching an offensive to put Aru on the podium.
Just a reminder, in case you kind of lost track of his Tour de France, but Vincenzo Nibali is most emphatically not a GC threat. He is 1 hour and 12 minutes down in the general classification, in 36th place. So in case you were wondering whether Astana could play a kind of 1-2 in terms of the GC race, they can't. It's all in for Fabio Aru. And it's all out the back for Etixx Quick-Step alongside Marcel Kittel, who's got one more day of suffering after today, and then he's got his big chance for a 3rd win on the Champs-Élysées.
This is going to be a long day out the back now, because there's still 2 or 3 kilometres left of this climb, and then we know that Astana are going to keep driving this forward, so it'll be difficult for them to chase back onto the peloton, which means that this is going to be a further 136 kilometres, 140 kilometres of riding in a gruppetto, which is at the moment is a small gruppetto, because nobody wants to form it now. As you see people going off the back, normally you'll hear somebody shout gruppetto. In other words, saying, let's get together, let's stick together, let's just let's make it to the finish safely at an easy pace. But if you do that now, you risk finishing outside the time delay. So everybody wants to hang on for as long as they can, and probably to the hors category Montée de Bisson, because if they get dropped there, they can form the gruppetto, and it's a fairly steady ride into the finish.
So 2 kilometres to go for the peloton to the top of the Col de la Faucla. Du Montmain, let's just give it its specific name to differentiate it from the other Col de la Faucla on this edition of the Tour de France. 2:51 the advantage, holding constant again now. It's come under 3 minutes, and it does suggest that this breakaway move won't be contesting the stage win today. Who knows, when the race comes back together again, another move might go.
You can see all the stragglers there, and that's goes to show the pace that Astana is setting. It's controlled because they brought down a big chunk at first, but now they're on this climb. They don't want to go too deep because they don't want to lose their domestiques too early. They just want to get over the top of this and then use them up a bit longer, get another 30 kilometres out of them before they engage their climbing force, because they do have great climbers there with Diego Rosa, Tiralongo, Fuglsang. So that's 3 riders they don't want to use up before they have to. So the Grivko and Luis Leon have a big job in their hands right now. They're basically doing what Luke Rowe and Ian Stannard do for Team Sky.
Yeah, I wanted to make that comparison. We caught a glimpse of Luke Rowe, and he's still firmly in and alongside the Team Sky train. And with all these flatlands, as you've said, still to come before the next climb, Luke Rowe and Ian Stannard will be needed. Albeit they won't be riding at the front of the race, where they would have anticipated being at the moment, because Astana are riding. Meanwhile, Not long to go. It says there's 0.9 kilometres, so 900 metres to go. That doesn't quite tally with the information I've got, but we'll see where the finishing line is. Certainly Rafa Majka has got Robert Kieselowski in front of him now, and I'm just wondering where De Gendt is. That's probably, well, he's alongside the polka dot jersey, so it looks like he's going to be trying to compete with Rafa Majka for mountains points here. If he doesn't, then we know what's going to happen now with the polka dot jersey competition. It will be over before you know it. Jalinson Pantano is a player, or was a player, in the polka dot jersey competition, but even if he were to win everything and Rafa Majka nothing, his gap is too big and he wouldn't be able to win the King of the Mountains competition. So there's actually only Navarro, De Gendt and Majka who can wear that jersey in Paris, mathematically. Marcus Burkhardt from BMC.
In distance now, so the pace is being lifted slightly.
Big old unit there, isn't he, Marcus Burkhardt? And that's tough. It's a tough climb, this one. It's steep, 7%, nearly 10 kilometres in length. And the final 3 kilometres of this climb that they've just been over are at an average gradient of 11%, and that might explain why Burkhardt is in a little bit of trouble. And that's the distillation of the best climbers, if you like. Alexis Villamoz, Jalinson Pantano, Robert Kieselowski and Rafa Majka, and Thomas De Gendt, of course. Is De Gendt just trying to spoil the day for Rafa Majka, or does he still believe that he can get the polka dot jersey to become a competition, make it close? This is a Cat 1 climb and there are 10 points available at the top. And I wonder, that's broken the breakaway into little bits and pieces as Vegard Brein goes out the back from Fortunea Vital Concept. He's more of a lead-out man for Dan McLay normally. Vegard Brein, the young Norwegian. His teammate Eduardo Sepulveda is still there, the Argentinian climber, but he's in the second group. Pantano's dropping off that little group of 4 who've gone clear. Rafa Majka looks to see that Pantano's no longer there, and De Gendt is.
For sure, that's just a tactical move by Pantano. These De Gendt, Kieselowski was setting the pace there to set up this sprint, and Thomas De Gendt is now leading it out. So we can now say safely that Thomas De Gendt is chasing the mountains jersey as well.
He is, and he wants all 10 points, but Rafa Majka's right on his heels, so he will take 10, Thomas De Gendt, and Rafa Majka crosses the line in second place for 8. So De Gendt is now on a cool 100, and Rafa Majka is edged up to 181, an 81-point lead, and at this point there are still 101 mountain points available.
That goes to show that how difficult those final 100 metres are of this climb, so it'll be interesting to see the peloton if Luis Leon Sanchez and Grivko can make it over that section, or whether they really do pace it and slow it down a bit just to make sure they do sum it over. And in this group, although that's split apart, a lot of those riders will have been letting the 4 of them go in front, the Kieselowski led group, if you like, because they know that they were chasing the points and that as soon as they got across the line they'll sit up again, so there's no point going in the red.
3 minutes. It's gone out over 3 minutes because of that acceleration at the very front for mountains points by Rafa Majka and Thomas De Gendt. De Gendt sitting on the wheel of Alexis Villamoz. Où sont les attaques? Well, we're kind of seeing an attack today. It's not coming from Andre Greipel. He is in this just beginning to lose contact with the main peloton, but he should be able to get back on at this point, even if he goes over the top, which is imminent, with a little bit of a gap. Don't think the gruppetto has formed just yet. There's the peloton, still quite big. In fact, the Tour de France peloton is still very big, isn't it? One of the biggest there's ever been. People have been trying to measure just how many riders are in relative to previous editions, and there are different ways of measuring it, but still got, I think I'm right in saying, the highest percentage of riders to finish a Tour de France at this point. But they're beginning to fall away. But it's not been a really bruising Tour de France. The crashes that we've seen have been isolated, few and far between. The weather's been good, it's been dry, as it is today as well. The crosswinds didn't bring too many riders down in that chaos either, in that middle week. Yeah, the riders who have abandoned through crashes have just been isolated, strange incidents. We don't really know what happened to Shane Archibald, except that his bike got snapped in half and it broke his pelvis. The Contador incident, one of the first big names to crash out, you know, that was just a relatively innocuous incident, but just did for his Tour de France. But they've been few and far between, just isolated little moments.
Yeah, it seems to be more like individual pilot errors, if you like. It's we haven't seen the bigger, the big pile-ups. So we can really, you can see here how they're hanging on. They know they need to make it over this one, because then they can sit in the wheels till the next climb, where perhaps a gruppetto will start to form. But at the moment, if they don't make it on, they're going to have to be chasing and doing the equivalent of riding in the front of the bunch for the rest of the stage. So you dig very deep right here, and even Peter Sagan, it's not often we see him really having to hang on, but that's what he's doing right now.
Sagan in a position now where he doesn't really have any objective other than being competitive with the sprint in Paris, which I'm sure will be his ambition. You wouldn't rule out a Peter Sagan win in Paris either. That would be quite something. Not impossible against a slightly out of sorts Andre Greipel, and a sense that Marcel Kittel is a little bit weaker on this tour than he has been in previous ones. And they go over the top of the first climb. So the yellow jersey group going over as one, still with Astana and Katusha on the front. Over the Col de la Fauclade de Montmartre, the next climb they don't start until 78k.
Well, they've already picked up the pace at the front, because you see it's 3:30, so that's gone up 40 seconds in the last kilometre of that climb. So that acceleration for the mountain points has really forced that group to start working hard again and chasing. So I imagine they're still trying to chase back onto Rafael Majka. Yeah, here they are. So they're still trying to, they are just making the advantage of the descent and forcing that group to chase them back on. Whether they'll keep that going at the bottom will depend how far the group is behind.
Well, they might as well have attacked over the top of that climb, because that breakaway was getting caught, wasn't it? And getting caught quite quickly. So given that was the situation, it's in Majka's interests to make sure he can get to the next climb. It's only a Cat 2 climb though, and there are only 5 points available. He can't seal the deal until, well, it would have to be the next climb after that.
And here's the group. They're not far behind, so normally when they get to, you can just see, I think you've just got a straggler there behind. But this group now, it's good, it's forced that pace, so the acceleration over the top, it really did make them, because at the same time this group doesn't want Rafa Majka and De Gendt to get a gap, because if they do, then that really is the race over for them.
There's a high-tech photographer there with a flash, taking pictures of the riders on that lovely smooth bit of tarmac. Slightly older tarmac here, but there they go. Descending all the way now, hit some flat roads, and then the next climb is another Col de la Fauclade, the Cage. 78.1k is the official start of that climb. So the breakaway has a slightly bigger advantage now, 3.5 minutes over the peloton. Welcome back. They continue to descend 93.1 kilometers. This is the back of the peloton, and that is Jacopo Guarnieri from Team Katusha, who's in a little group of riders who just got a bit gapped, a little bit distanced from the yellow jersey group. They're just chasing back on at the moment. Meanwhile, at the very front of the race, 3 riders have gone clear over the top of that climb, and they are Rafa Majka, Thomas De Gendt and Alexis Villamoz. And the last time we heard, they had an advantage of 29 seconds over the chase, what remains of the breakaway. So a big group chasing a small group, but it was an improvised move, really. They were chasing mountain points, De Gendt and Majka, and they attacked over that climb and have gone clear on the descent. So these are the 3 leaders, and they've still got 3.5 minutes over the yellow jersey group.
Yeah, for these, well, especially Thomas De Gendt and Majka, they're a big ambition now that they understand that the breakaway is no doubt going to get caught by the chasing peloton before the finish, is to lock down those mountain points. And this group wasn't going fast enough, so when they had the gap over the top, normally you would expect them to sit up and be absorbed once more by the group, but they pushed on, and the technical descent helped them massively as well, because we could see it was very windy, and when you're descent like that, 2 or 3 riders are going to go faster down there normally than a group that gets a little bit stopped up and broken, and it's very hard to pass each other. So there's somebody in the front of this group, and you can see they're bickering a bit amongst each other already. So these 3 riders now, and they're 3, by the looks of it, they were the 3 strongest riders going over the top of that, because they distanced everybody, although some of those riders behind will have just been conserving energy. They've made a bit of a mistake now, because those 3 riders are going to be difficult to bring back, and they're going to push on as hard as they can in an attempt to get to kilometre 96.5, which is the summit of the all category climb. So they've got a bit of a challenge on their hands now, but it's riders of their abilities. It shouldn't be a problem to hold off the bunch till then.
I'm not entirely sure what Thomas de Gent's playing at here, really, other than being Thomas de Gent, because why did he take maximum mountains points? Surely he can't believe that he can actually take the polka dot jersey from Rafa Majka. If he was alone and Majka was back in the yellow jersey group, then yes, go and sweep up as much as you possibly can, but the gap's just too big. He can't realistically close this gap, and so surely the cleverer thing would have been to allow Majka those maximum points, sit up and then ride for a stage win if this group could possibly stay away.
I don't think Thomas de Gent's that type of rider. He doesn't really think things through. I think he was just at the front, saw a line and sprinted for it, really. It's, which has its pros and cons. It's why he often ends up in these breakaways and pulls off moves that seem highly unlikely. Equally, he does do moves that you wouldn't consider to be the most savvy when it comes to tactics. But at the same time, he is an attacking rider. An attacking rider has that mentality, and it's better to have it than not have it, put it that way, even if it does at times mean you make silly mistakes.
I mean, if he had excluded himself from the mountains points and gifted Majka the points of the first climb and then the next climb on the road, that would have been it. Majka would have won the King of the Mountains competition, and then he'd have a fine ally to work with.
Possibly, but it might be that he simply doesn't trust Majka to...
There is that.
So it's probably more likely that. I'll gift you the points and then you still ride away from me.
Yeah, there is that distinct possibility with Rafa Majka, isn't there?
I imagine it's probably more to do with that.
Jarlinson Pantana, another rider up the road. We just caught a glimpse of his red dossard that he is still wearing 2 days in the with the red number on his back because of his Prix de la Combativité up to Fino Emosson the other day in his second place.
There's also the fact that maybe Thomas de Gent was just saw us splitting behind and decided to really sprint over the top and get that gap that they've now secured.
So the mountain points were accidental. It was
Possibly,
actually a racing move.
Yeah, very similar to the Chris Froome move, but at different points in the race where you sort of go for the points, and that's why everyone was sitting up, let them battle for it, and then before they can realise they've already gone.
Little splits in the peloton as the big men from Katusha continue to battle to get back on. Marco Haller is the next of the Katusha riders just to find a bit of a chase on his hands, and that is strung out. And that little gap that you can see there, some 30 riders ahead, will be tough to close. Marcel Kittel, is he there as well? Seeing there looks like there's 4 or 5 Etixx Quick-Step riders, which would imply that the main man is there and chasing back on.
Yeah, because I think they're very good descenders, so and that was a descent that would have suited their skill set to get back on. Plus, they would have been desperate to get back on, so no doubt took a lot of risks.
And it's all about the man with the white helmet, Fabio Aru, today for Astana. And look at that gap. That's the... they would have been dropped on the climb, and they're probably closing the gap, those riders. Or is he going out, David?
No, I think that would have been more likely, judging by the descent. Could have split easily on the descent if Astana were really turning the screw at the front. But on a windy descent like that, because the peloton gets stretched out, and if you have one bad descender in front of you, and it's such a tight road, it's very difficult to get around them unless you dive bomb them. And they just let 3 or 4 bike lengths go, and then the speed it's going at, it's nigh on impossible to close that back down, especially when you then hit the flat and it suddenly goes out again, and you pull off to try and let somebody through, and they're like, I don't want to help, and then before you know it, it's 15 bike lengths, and it keeps extending.
Just over 10 kilometres to go as we look at Thomas de Gent's handlebars. He's got an onboard camera. I wonder if that's one of the live cameras. I haven't seen any images from him, but that would be a treat if it was.
12 seconds, they bring it back. We can see the 3 riders in front, so they have realised the danger of this, and they've grouped together and actually working very well. So, but we can also see that the peloton is actually, I think it's more likely that 3 riders slow down a bit, judging by the fact the time gap 3:13 is being taken from them, and before they were at 3:30. So actually they've slowed down, and this group's kept going at the same speed and is catching them up again.
Yeah, time for Thomas de Gent actually to take a drink from his water bottle, and you can see by the way Rafa Majka's pedalling that that effort has been ratcheted down a few notches, and they will be joined by the rest of the breakaway. Emmanuel Buchmann leading the chase, 2 Germans, Tony Martin there, and Danny Navarro, both the Fortuner Vital Concept riders, Vegard Brein and Eduardo Sepulveda, the Argentinian, 2 riders from BMC, Amael Moinard and Marcus Burkhardt, Jarlinson Pantano, the climber from Lotto Jumbo, George Bennett, he's there, and they're all coming back together again. Nathanael Berhane too.
So just under 19 kilometres left to the foot of the next climb, the next Col de la Fauclard. And so you can see this valley is quite big, and this group's, look how scattered that all is. It looks like it's almost been a crosswind day, not a mountain day. So that shows the stress that Astana are already putting on, which is part of this tactic, is to really fatigue everybody. And look, that's only about 50 riders in that front group, and everyone behind is redlining, trying to get back on. Full complement of riders by the looks of Team Sky once again.
And that's the gap and the chase. Trying to look for the blue jerseys of Etixx Quick-Step. Lampre have gone back for someone. They've got most of the... Yeah, Louis Meintjes, exactly. He might have been put into trouble. There are the blue jerseys of Marcel Kittel and Etixx Quick-Step. And that's the back of the race. So not a foregone conclusion. This is all going to come back together. All strung out, single file. Days like this must be just horrifyingly difficult.
It is, because they chased for so long, and they'll have been already, these guys at the back will have been under maximum stress on that climb. They just get over the top, and they've got to race down the descent, because that's then flat out. They come off the descent, they're in the valley, and then that's flat out. So it just starts to wear them down.
Little glance over the shoulder and little word on the radio as a smile breaks out uncharacteristically across the features of Vincenzo Nibali. They're looking for their leader, and he's back in the fold. Fabio Aru still has his team working hard at the front, and the gap, let's come back down to 3 minutes again. Welcome back. 80.9 kilometres, 2:57 the advantage for the breakaway, as the peloton and Paulo Tirolongo, Luis Leon Sanchez, Andrei Grivko pass through a feed zone and grab a musette and a spot of lunch. So the breakaway has all come back together again. That little attack by De Gent, Maika and Villamoz has been brought back, and all is restored to order as Wout Poels signals that he wants 2 bags, one of which he will hand to Chris Froome. Or what? No, Froome actually gets one from Luke Rowe instead. So it's a slightly quiet phase in the peloton, and the breakaway will probably just ease out a little bit now and extend their advantage at this point. Flat roads now until they start to climb in the next couple of kilometres. There's one of the riders from Fortuner Vital Concept, that's Brice Feillu, and they've got 2 riders up the road, Vegard Brain and one Eduardo Sepulveda in the breakaway move, the Argentinian rider who well, last year made quite an impact on the Tour de France, on the stage, in fact, that was won by Steve Cummings up to Mende when he was riding for, Sepulveda was riding for the team that is now known as Fortuner, was Bretagne last year, of course. He was disqualified on that stage after breaking his chain with 23 kilometres to go and jumping in the AG2R La Mondiale team car and getting a lift for about 100 metres. Extraordinary situation, really, as the AG2R La Mondiale director sportif Vincent Lavenu explained later. We saw Eduardo Sepulveda by the roadside, therefore we pulled over in order to give him a spare wheel. Then he opened the car door and sat on the back seat. He was totally panicking. We only drove about 100 metres with him on board, but we respect the Tour's rules, and it was unnecessary to expel him from the competition. I feel very sorry for him. Sepulveda himself said, I understand that everyone's disappointed with what happened. I lack experience. It's my first Tour, and I've been under a great deal of stress. Have you ever known that before?
No.
That's a new one. It is a new one.
There with running.
It is indeed. What else, Matt, can you tell us about the man from Argentina? I mean, not many Argentinian cyclists in the Tour de France, full stop, historically.
No,
Richesi is on this edition.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Max is there, and I mean, not many Argentine professional cyclists, full stop. The Aedo brothers, Juan Jose and Lucas Sebastian, both formerly of Saxo Bank. And as you say, Max Richesi, who also represents Argentina on the track. But he's from, they are both, all 3 of them, the Aedo brothers and Max are from Buenos Aires province. Eduardo Sepulveda is from Chubut in Patagonia.
Yep. Yeah.
And aside from getting in cars, he's a very good rider. He was second in the Tour of Turkey last year. Actually, a race won the previous year by another rider in the breakaway, Natnao Birhani. And he also brilliantly won one of the mountain stages in the Tour of San Luis in January this year, 54 seconds ahead of Javier Acevedo, I think so, former teammate of yours, Dave, and he finished second in that race to Dayer Quintana Nairo's brother. So a decent little climber, Eduardo Sepulveda, but he tends to be decent in January, not in July, which is sort of the wrong way round. Gets in cars in July.
And this is the sound of me making notes about how to pronounce Eduardo Sepulveda.
Sepulveda. Exactly, yeah.
Now you can see AG Tour La Mondiale just moving up on the left-hand side of the road and shepherding Romain Bardet closer to the front of the race. Big days racing for him. They've got a rider in the breakaway, and he's a good rider as well. Alexis Villamoz, you'll remember last year when he won Stage 8 and the Mur de Bretagne. He is their rider who they placed in the breakaway. What can you tell us about him, Matt?
I can tell you lots about him. He was, as is well known, a very, very good mountain bike rider. He was the French junior cross-country mountain bike champion in 2006, European junior silver medalist the same year, the French under-23 cross-country champion in 2009, and in 2010 he was world silver medalist in 2009, fourth in the Worlds in 2010, and he has a master's in banking and insurance, which is a kind of insurance policy in its own right against his cycling career stalling, which it shows no signs of doing. And his teammate Domenico Pozzovivo, by the way, also has a master's in economics and wrote a thesis on the economy of the Italian South since unification. So a very well qualified team, AG Tour. Romain Bardet as well, very educated man, and always using words that the French cycling journalists don't understand. So, when it comes to academic qualifications, AG Tour hands down.
I wonder what conclusions Domenico Pozzovivo reached about the southern Italian economy.
It could do with some improvement.
That motorway down there, the route of national shame. That extraordinary piece of motorway that was built with millions and millions of euros of European money, but the European Union refused to qualify and categorise as a motorway because it's so substandard. Anyway, that is a huge digression. Thanks very much for that, Matt. At the front of the race, Thomas De Gendt is doing his thing again. He's got on the front, forcing the pace, and Tony Galopin from Lotto Soudal, his teammate, is with him. Michael Matthews from Orica Bike Exchange is close to the front. What does this climb look like? Well, it's 5.6 kilometres in length and it's 7.8% average gradient. They go over the top at 72.5 kilometres remaining, and the peloton now is climbing too.
Astana are turning it up again. They've now got 3 riders riding, so they've added, I think it's Kangart, Tanel Kangart to Luis Leon Sanchez and Andrei Grivko. Vicioso, Katusha rider, is sitting there in 5th place, but he's not contributing so much now. So they really are just keeping this going. And 250, as you can see, the time gap immediately starts to come down a bit, 252, 255. So, and I've also noticed, we can see there just a glimpse from him is
Zaccarin.
Yeah, and Rodriguez as well. So I think they're all poised, ready. Now, whether it will be on this climb, I imagine it's going to be on the next climb.
Well, the softening up will continue in the meantime if Fabio Aru isn't going to attack on this climb. There's the polka dot jersey. Rafa Majka's looking at 5 points at the top of this climb, should he get them. And that will be his ambition. Still won't be enough, I don't think, unless Thomas De Gendt scores none. Let's see. Do the maths when we know exactly how many points both those riders collect. Bora Argon 18 rider is Emanuel Buchmann, last year's German national road race champion. And this year's road race champion for that country is Andrei Greipel, and 2 more physically different riders I don't think you could imagine. Buchmann is very, very slight, and he is something of a climber. He's a good prospect as well. Bora Argon 18 are in an interesting phase of their development as a team, aren't they? Because they're about to get a big injection of cash from a new sponsor, we understand, that would enable them to sign a rider of Peter Sagan's stature, which is widely rumoured. And should that be the case, then I would imagine he'll bring with him another raft of highly qualified top riders, and you might find that some of the lesser names in the Bora Argonne 18 are looking for ranks and looking for a job. That might force a few out the other end.
Yes, that's normally what happens. A rider of Peter Sagan's stature would probably come with 3 riders, perhaps even 4 riders, depending on the negotiations and what he wants to do. And that's also, I mean, a team like Bora is going to be making a big step up, very much a bit like Dimension Data going from Pro Continental to World Tour and signing Mark Cavendish. Mark Cavendish came with 2 or 3 riders, came with Bernie Eisel, Mark Renshaw. I'm not sure if he took anybody else, but those 2 for sure. And so that's one of the demands you can make if you're moving on to a slightly smaller team. If Peter Sagan was moving to another World Tour team, he might be able to take 1 rider, 2 riders. But part of the deal when you're going to a smaller team, you probably get the same money, maybe even more, but you also get more negotiating power, and you probably would take more riders, more of your pals that you trust. And for Peter Sagan, that means also his younger brother. Indeed.
Juraj, the reigning Slovakian road race champion, finished in first place with Peter Sagan in second place. 4.3k to go for the breakaway until they get to the top of the climb. 2:54 the advantage. So round about that 3-minute mark is pretty much where it's been for a while now. But Astana still have numbers, and that's interesting. Diego Rosa's gone to the front, and just a little gesture of what's going on there. Diego Rosa, is that a serious disagreement with Tiralongo? Rosa just moved alongside him and said, "You're riding too hard, just calm it down, calm it down."
Yeah, I think because that's exactly what happened.
The advantage is about 3 minutes. Astana in a little bit of tactical disarray at this moment on this climb. Welcome back. 2.7 kilometres of climbing for the 20 riders up the road. They've got a 3 minutes and 22-second advantage. This is the situation back in the main peloton with Vincenzo Nibali just pulling off to the side, but still Astana working very hard. Meanwhile, at the back of the race, you can see Andre Greipel is still in contact. Steve Cummings is there, and well, Marcel Kittel, last time we saw him, was hanging on. So the Gruppetto hasn't formed just yet, and they are on the 3rd climb of the day, the 2nd categorised climb though. Now, you can see Andre Grivko working for Astana on the front. Just a few minutes ago, though, this happened, and it was very revealing. David, what's going on here? Diego Rosa rides up to the front where Grivko is working and has a little word.
Telling him just to slow down a bit, just to control the pace, and I think Grivko, he's like, looks and says, look, you do your job, I'll do my job. He's been on the front already, Grivko, 40 Ks. He's setting a control pace, and Diego Rosa's like, what? So there's already a little bit of disharmony there, and which isn't good. I don't see really what Grivko's doing wrong there. He's a very experienced rider. He's setting a control pace, and yet he's being told by Diego Rosa to slow it down. No wonder he showed a bit of passive aggression there.
I don't think you needed to have a great grasp of Italian to lip read the reaction as well from Diego Rosa. And Vicioso from Katusha is joining in the workload. So Katusha is, they're working together with Astana at this point. There's Ilnur Zakarin, winner 2 days ago on the race, up to Fino Emerson.
Well, Rodriguez, because their team leader, Joaquim Rodriguez, is in 11th place at the moment at 8 minutes. So if he wants to, well, we won't know whether he's going for the stage or move up on GC in the top 10. It's just been a pause there. Sometimes that happens with a bunch of somebody on clips or rides into the back of somebody. It causes a little stall, which is, again, one of the reasons why being at the back is never a good idea, because there's more chance of that happening to you. It tends to yo-yo a bit in Concertina at the back with all the bunching up and accelerating and little incidents. But Steve Cummings, that's just par for the course, though.
Yeah, I wonder if the motorbike came close to just possibly just running into the back of Cummings there, hence his little glance over his shoulder at the moto pilot. Yeah, Andre Grivko wasn't too impressed with that little bit of advice from Diego Rosa. Nearly 33 years of age, Andre Grivko, the Ukrainian. And that is a wonderful aerial shot of the climb that they are currently on, the Col de la Fauclade de Cage. The 2nd Col de la Fauclade today. Much shorter though, 5.6 kilometres is all they have to do, an average gradient of 7.8%.
So the question may be whether Astana and Katusha had already discussed this morning, and both had a strong interest in going for the stage win today. They both have realistic options with Nibali or more. Aru showing that excellent time trial yesterday, Zakharin 2 days ago winning the stage, Joaquim Rodriguez back up there again with the GC riders. So in both, there's 2 riders from each team who could realistically go for the stage win. So it's in their interest to not let that break go and not allow the usual script to be played out, because if they hadn't started them chasing immediately on that first climb, this group of 20 riders that's ahead would already be maybe 10 plus minutes in front and prove difficult to bring back for the stage win.
Once again, Vincenzo Nibali had disappeared from the front and alongside his Astana teammates, and you could just see him in that last shot just working his way back to the front. So I don't think on a climb he would have dropped back to the team car to have a word, but
no, I think he'd stop for a call of nature just before the side of the road. Elio Kaiser.
Sometimes the answers are pretty obvious and fairly banal, and maybe that was the case with Vincenzo Nibali at that point.
Elio Kaiser for Etixx Quick-Step there, suffering on the back, no doubt paying for all the work he did in the first week and a half of the race, riding on the front, controlling brakes to make sure there was a bunch sprint that Marcel Kittel wanted. There we go, see, another stall. So that's what happens. There's just people riding to the back of each other, and then it's just all stalls up again.
Oof. Mind you, it's allowed Elio Kaiser to get back on, and a little bit of assistance from a spectator as well. So it's worked out okay for Elio Kaiser. Yeah, he and Julien Vermont are the key men on the flat for Etixx Quick-Step to do all the early work, and so too is Lars Bak, working for Andre Greipel. He is the man who does the Kaiser role in that team. Stage winner on the Giro d'Italia, Elio Kaiser, but best known really for his 6-day racing in the track. That's what he does best of all, and he's absolutely brilliant at it. I think you'll have an opportunity, if you are anywhere near London, to see him in action at the 6-day London later on in the year. Certainly rode it fantastically, flamboyantly last year. And it's a world apart, isn't it? 6-day racing on the track from what he's doing here on the Grand Tours.
Oh yeah,
very versatile rider.
And it's very demanding. It's a traditional racing series that back in the day, up to 30 years ago, 20 years ago, they did actually race 6 days, taking only a few hours off each day. Insanity. Now it's a little bit more humane.
British invention, 6-day racing. First held in Islington in North London, the first 6-day meet. But then really it was the Americans that turned it into a thing in Madison Square Garden. Got a long and glorious history. Yeah, a little glance out of our window here at the finish line at Mont Blanc does suggest it's getting a bit more threatening up in the mountains, but still it's dry. That's good news for the riders.
No, I'm just looking at the computer, the data that's available. It looks like Lutsenko has dropped off from what we can see from that front group, which would indicate they're calling him back. So Lutsenko is a strong rider, and I doubt he'd have been dropped from that move at this point in the race unless Astana said that he's no longer serve any purpose for us up there. We could
just
roll back and contribute to the chase with Grivko.
Group's gone out. Nearly 4 minutes now, their advantage. 72.8k remaining. So they're pretty close to the top, as Kaiser, rider we were just talking about, finds himself just dangling off the back once again. And he's got another couple of kilometres to get over the top in contact with that group. Riders, the entire Tour de France disappeared from sight from the helicopter there through that dense forest, but they've emerged again. There's a glimpse of Richie Porte, surrounded by his domestiques for BMC. Michael Scher, the Swiss rider, on the right-hand side. That's Michael Cherel, 2 similarly named riders from Étoile Mondiale. The climber on whom Romain Bardet often relies to be his mountain lieutenant.
Richie Porte is definitely one of the riders, along with Aru, that has to attack today. They're in a position.
Lutsenko's still there, actually, David.
Once again, the data's wrong.
There he is, yeah.
Just stop relying on that.
Sorry, Richie Porte.
So you've got Fabio Aru in 7th place at 6 minutes 8 seconds. Richie Porte in 6th place at 5 minutes. So those two really, they have nothing to lose. You have the riders like Bauke Mollema and Adam Yates in second and third place, who they're very much in a more defensive situation. It's not up to them to attack each other. They know other people are going to attack, as Thomas de Gendt once again leads over the mountain.
So Thomas de Gendt takes a largely unnecessary 5 points, leaving Rafa Majka to pick up 3. So Rafa Majka, he is now on 184 and Thomas de Gendt is on 105, which means that there are 79 points between them. And there are 96 remaining on the Tour de France, 45 remaining today. So it could all happen on the next climb, but there's no guarantee by the time they get to the top of the next super category climb, the Monte de Pisan, with 49.5k remaining, that this breakaway will still be out there, because it's the penultimate climb of the day, and it's by far the biggest and the most severe. 12.4 kilometers in length, an average gradient of 8.2. And if Astana are intent on ripping up the rulebook and going long on the Tour de France stage here, they've kind of got to do it on this climb and not wait for the final climb.
Yeah, for sure. They're going to have to go there. It's 4-minute gap now, 71 k's. They're halfway through the stage, a couple of k's away from being halfway through the stage, and they've still got the 2 biggest climbs of today's stage to come, with the all category, the super category one coming up, which is a beast at 12.4 k's at 8.2%. So, and then there's quite a long descent and a bit of a plateau after that before the finish climb of up to Saint-Gervais Mont Blanc, which is 10 k's, 8%, so it's even harder. It's going to be, I expect the same actually, but I think we're going to see now, as we see the Gruppetto forming as such, but I think they're still going to try and chase back on, because they'll want to get on and form the Gruppetto on the next big climb. But we're going to see on the early slopes of the next climb what Astana want to do, whether they want to really stretch this out and do some damage, in which case they really have to reduce this group down on that next climb.
You're looking at the back of the peloton. They've still got 1k of climbing to go, and Marcel Kittel's doing a good job here. He's hanging on a lot longer than a number of other riders who are beginning to go backwards. Just caught a glimpse of Jacopo Guarnieri from Katusha. He's lost contact, and Kittel's teammate Ilio Kesa is considerably further back down the road. So he's going okay, Marcel Kittel, just holding onto the coattails. He's got Andre Greipel in sight as well, measuring himself against the other German sprinter, as they hang on, with Paris very much in their thoughts and their minds. Jarlinson Pantano is the last of the breakaway riders, with Michael Matthews just in front of him. Natnael Bahani from Dimension Data, third from last. And de Gendt was at it again, wasn't he? Saw a line in the tarmac and sprinted for mountain points, and it doesn't really make a great deal of sense.
It doesn't really make any sense, and that's just for his morale. It's Marcus Berghardt winds it up a bit on the descent. One of the areas he will be able to make everyone else suffer a little bit. They seem to be dishing it out to him on the climbs. He is at a disadvantage being so big and heavy, but this is where he can hand it to them a little.
He is big and heavy, as a Labrador found out in 2007 when it ran out from the side of the road and sent Marcus Berghardt catapulting through the air off his bike. And remarkably, the Labrador was absolutely fine, just got off and ran away. I think Berghardt was okay as well. I can't remember whether he abandoned on that stage, but no, I think he got up, dusted himself down and got back in the bike race. 2007, 9 years ago. Good Lord. And there's Kittel, still at the back of the peloton, still in contact. Has it gone now? Has that broken emphatically and decisively for these riders?
That should be enough. They just need to keep that distance there, because when they get to the descent, the sprinters are such exceptional descenders. They can limit that, not go too far in the red over the top, and know they can bring back 20 seconds or 30 seconds on the descent.
Over the top they go, and they'll try and string things out again on the descent. They won't just sit up and relax. They really flew down that last descent, and by the time they got to the valley roads at the bottom, the peloton was in 3 distinct groups. So this will be an attacking ride, I would imagine, from Astana. And again, they need to continue to soften this up. This is their tactic, to go long today, and they need to take every opportunity to do that. Kittel and Greipel.
And Degenkolb.
And John Degenkolb. 3 German sprinters. Over the top they go, some 30 seconds down on the main peloton, and they've got to descend hard now to get back on, because it's moving at the front. In fact, Every section of the race here is lively today. The peloton, the breakaway group are pushing on. They have to, of course. And there's no respite at the front of the yellow jersey group either, as Astana continue to set the pace.
Jarlinson, Pantano, Navarro, Thomas de Gendt, Maika, they're the riders in this group you would expect to possibly move on this next climb, being the best climbers. Rui Costa, if he's going well, Pierre Rolland, although we haven't really seen it so much yet this race, but they're two riders who you would expect as well. But I do think they're going to have to move in this next one if they stand any chance of making it to the finish.
4 minutes, it's as simple as that. George Bennett just moves into the wind shadow of the motorbike carrying the blackboard, and he moves up to the front, or close to the front, the Lotto Jumbo man. He's another climber. He could make that selection that you've just described, David.
It looked like it was Thomas de Gendt forcing it again at the front, so he really is pushing it.
That does not look like a relaxing descent. Sinews stretched in his forearms as he braces himself against the bike, trying to seize the opportunity to eat on the descent, as he has to. Chris Froome has to stay fueled up, but that's a full-on descent that he's involved in there. Geraint Thomas in front of him, and the whole Team Sky train pretty much in one piece. Playing second string though today to Astana, who've decided to race. 66.8 kilometres to go, 4 minutes and 3 seconds. The breakaway is up the road. They'll start to climb at 61.9k. That's the official start of the climb of the Monte de Pizan. And as you were saying, David, it's 12.4 kilometres in length. So they'll be down at the foot of this climb in no time at all at this rate. And then it goes uphill again. Over the top of that, well, there's another descent and another long descent, actually, with a slight false flat section in it, and then it dips down again. And finally, they'll climb 9.8 kilometres up to Le Betex, Saint-Gervais-Mont-Blanc, which is the finish line today. The last uphill finish on the Tour de France, with 2 stages remaining after today. Confirmation that Thomas de Gendt took the points from Rafa Maika, and he's taken maximum points so far, all 15 available on in the King of the Mountains competition on stage 19. So he's closed his gap to 79 points to Rafa Maika in that competition.
I see Greipel already rejoined onto the back, so didn't even need the full descent for them to rejoin the peloton.
There was a perception a few years ago that Chris Froome wasn't one of the best descenders around, but I just don't see any evidence of that any longer. He looks absolutely like he can handle himself on a descent, and as his attack showed in Luchon, it's something he's clearly working at and feels confident with.
I think it's his style belies the skill, because he does always look like he's slightly off centre, but actually, I mean, the bottom line is you don't win a Tour de France without being able to descend fantastically and be able to do everything fantastically. So, and I think it is because he looks a little bit different that gives people get the perception that he's not comfortable and not going that fast.
Heading into the village of Kej. That's how you pronounce that word. I did have to check today. There are some gentlemen on the finishing line here in folkloric costume who I identified with forensic ability as locals. And I went up to them and said, how do you say this? And they said Kej. So they are down from the Col de la Forclaz de Kej. They've done 2 of the 4 categorized climbs. But in terms of the size, the stature and the difficulty of these climbs and the aggression with which they'll be raced, that was just the hors d'oeuvre. Next up, it's the Monte de Pizan, a super category climb, 12.4 kilometres at an average gradient of 8.2%. And that might well be where Aru makes his move. Welcome back. They haven't begun the official start of the Monte de Pizan climb, but David Miller, it looks as if Adam Yates is in some sort of trouble. He's off the back of the peloton. We haven't seen him crash or anything. There's no obvious reason why he's in that position, but Yates has got Ruben Plaza and we think Michael Albertini working with him to pace him back on. So there's no real reason why Yates is in this position, but it might just be that he's having a bad day.
Well, I hope it's not that. I hope it's he's had a mechanical or just been caught out in the descent, which does happen because there are lots of groups behind him. There's in about 3 or 4 groups behind him, as we saw, because we saw the motorbike coming up through to him before. And he's got another teammate just coming up behind, I think, Christoph Jules Jensen. But no, this is far from ideal, and he's burning energy now that he shouldn't be. But he's normally very vigilant and always at the front, so I'm wondering if maybe he missed a corner or something. But there is also, as we said at the top of the show, the chance, because he's a young rider, that it's just finally it's caught up with him, which wouldn't be a big shock or surprise, but it would be massively disappointing.
Well, he's back on. They've got him back in the peloton, Albacini and Ruben Plaza, but he's right at the back, and that's you can see the distance he's got to make up to bring himself right up alongside the likes of Bardet and Mollema, who are hugging the yellow jersey and riding alongside him towards the front of that line that's being strung out all the while by almost the entire, if not the entire, Astana team. They've got one rider still up the road, Alexei Lutsenko, but everyone else is working for Fabio Aru today and to make this race as hard as possible. And look how long that line is. That's what Yates has got to negotiate to get himself from the back to the front.
And Astana will have heard that, and there's no gifts, so they'll keep pushing it on.
Yeah, we're hearing that it was a bike change, so it wasn't mechanical, so that's good.
That's good.
That's good.
And he's lucky he had some teammates there, so that's managed to get him back on. But it was a far from easy moment to have to deal with that. As we can see, it's so strung out, and there's already groups being fired off the back, so probably one of the worst moments in this first part of the race for that to happen.
Right, Michael Matthews is going to have his work cut out to get over this climb with this group which contains so much climbing talent. He does go uphill very well, Michael Matthews, but he just moves to the back of the breakaway group as there's a rider down, and it's Tom Dumoulin who's gone down, and so too is Daniel Tekla-Heimenot. So Dumoulin has somehow touched a wheel and gone down pretty hard, just shaking off the pain, and he will get back on. Looks like his hand might be slightly hurt as well, a bit bashed and bruised, but there they go, just shooting off into the distance.
And you can feel the stress now. I think we're going to see this little instant. Now there it is, just at the bottom left of the screen.
So the wheels,
it was actually with his teammates, 2 in front, that rubbed the front wheel of the Cofidis rider, and then it just set off the wave. So it looked like it was either a Dimension Data or a Giant rider that actually caused the crash.
And again, there'll be a little split in the peloton after that as well. Well, there we go. So stress. Adam Yates under stress, Dumoulin under stress, the green jersey stressed out as well. A lot of Katusha riders there, because, yeah, I did notice that Joaquim Rodriguez was right at the back now, and he's got 3 teammates trying to place him.
Here we go. See, there goes Dimension Data who catches the wheel of the Cofidis rider, and then that just sets the chain off behind.
And the only rider actually to hit the deck, well, no, Tekla-Heimenot goes down as well, but Dumoulin certainly went down hard. Now AG2 A La Mondiale are riding.
Well, they can hear what's going on behind. It's all splitting apart. It's in their interest now. The podium is the goal for Bardet, and there's no gifts at this point of the race. They'll hear that Adam Yates had to chase on. There's no point in keeping it easy. It is bike racing after all. You can't just always just give gifts to people when something bad happens. So that's for sure what's happened there. They're just pushing on now to make it more difficult for Adam Yates to recover and to move up.
2 general classification riders not in an ideal position at the moment in the yellow jersey group. Adam Yates, we saw, and Joaquim Rodriguez just caught the wrong side of a little split in the peloton, being paced back on. That's why everyone smells blood and has moved to the front, including the shark himself, Vincenzo Nibali, who's going to try and help Fabio Aru to improve his position by the end of today. Peter Sagan's going backwards. The pace is getting ever higher. Pretty soon, this group will be climbing the Monte de Bizan. Matt, what can you tell us about this climb?
Well, it's not a familiar one at face value, but in fact the Signal de Bizan, which is the mountain, has this pass which connects to the Col des Saisies, which is a much more familiar climb near the ski resort of Les Saisies, a regular fixture on the Tour route. In 2009, a group 20 strong that included Franco Pelizzotti crossed the Cormet de Roselend before Thor Hushovd in the green jersey caught them, rode past them and led the race along for 80 kilometres over the Col des Saisies.
Well, you caught a glimpse of the white jersey as they passed underneath the bell tower in the village at the bottom of the climb. So he was still hovering at the back of that peloton. Ruben Plaza, his domestique, was being spat out of the back. So he's no longer got Plaza's assistance. And I didn't see Albertini there either. This is the breakaway group, and Vegard Brain, the young Norwegian, is dropping out of contention there.
Well, that was his domestiques of Adam Yates did everything they could, and at least they got him on right at the bottom of the climb, because although he's in the last place now, he's on the terrain where he can handle it on his own normally if he's feeling good. But if he'd been stuck on his own in that chase along the valley, he'd have already been way deep in the red, hitting the bottom, and then that would have caused him problems. But as we saw, AG2R and Astana, probably having heard that, won't have let up and probably accelerated a bit to make it even harder for him.
Rui Costa, Thomas de Gent, Natnael Bahani, George Bennett, and the climbers are coming to the fore now. Alexis Villamoz too, Sepulveda, and Dani Roaro is, well, he's struggling a little bit. He's towards the back, the Cofidis rider, and you'd expect this group as Pierre Allon moves to the front as well and sits on the wheel of George Bennett, who flicks a hopeful elbow, asking the Cannondale rider to share the work, which he duly does. You'd expect this group to start to splinter a little bit on this climb now.
And you can see how fast TJ Van Garderen is just having a horrible time. We were thinking that maybe he'd bounce back and be able to help Richie Porte, but he really is in the descending spiral, if you like.
Well, his Tour de France is over. He's cooked. I mean, he's done. Saw that the way he rode the time trial yesterday, demonstrably showing everybody that he wasn't trying, and he's not trying again today because something's up with TJ Van Garderen. There's the white jersey. He's about 5 wheels from the back as Ian Stannard. Just his job is done, and he's just trying to hang on to that train. So Yates is there, and as that group just gets smaller and smaller, you'd expect Yates to be able to just move his way up ever closer to the front. In fact, he's not too far from the front of the group. Even now, it's going to get smaller.
And there's one teammate there with him, Daryl Impey, who once again is showing his excellent climbing form. And this is where the tactics of that's Winner Anacona from Movistar. So that's
slightly surprising to see Winner Anacona, who's been one of their strongest men for Nairo Quintana, struggling at the back.
But as I was saying, regards to the tactics of Orica Bike Exchange to send a rider up the road in the break is now proving a brilliant decision, because they've almost had to use up all the domestiques that were there to bring him back on. So now he's only got one left with him, Daryl Impey, and then the second one is Michael Matthews, who's up the road in the break, who can, if required, be called back.
And that's a break that surely will be caught. 2 minutes and 18 seconds the advantage.
I don't know if you saw that. I just saw that was a very kind move there. Luke Rowe pushing Adam Yates. There was a little just because Adam Yates trying to move up, and Luke Rowe is going out the back. His job is done, and he gave Adam Yates a big push.
Well, there you go.
That's just national. That's friendship. They race together.
Same passport and friendship.
Yeah.
And a gesture from one pro to another as well. 2 minutes and 19 seconds. This breakaway surely will be caught. Rafa Majka, of course, doesn't want it to be caught before they get to the top of this climb. He wants these mountain points, and he's got every chance of sealing the win. By my calculations, De Gent needs to score 9 points more than Rafa Majka to keep this competition alive, essentially. If he doesn't, the jersey is Rafa Majka's. I say by my calculations, so it's just a word of warning. Don't necessarily take that as gospel. Yeah, De Gent needs to take significantly more points, let's say it like that, than Rafa Majka, otherwise it's done. So there's Luke Rowe, the rider you were just talking about.
And Valgren.
And Valgren, once again, a rider who is linked with Team Sky and is often seen on this Tour de France riding in the company of Team Sky riders and having a little natter.
Attacked by Majka, so he's turning on. We knew he had to do this if he wants to try and go for the stage. He's seen the time gap tumbling down. We'll be hearing that it's all kicking off behind, and now he has to move.
And well, Tony Martin, Michael Matthews, and Laurens ten Dam just hurt by that acceleration. Not Tony Martin's day today. That day was on the road to Bern on that fantastic two-up time trial with Julien Alaphilippe that earned them both the combativité on that occasion.
Now, Michael Matthews has the big challenge of trying to make it to the top of this climb before the peloton, or at least be within reach of the peloton, what's left of it at the top, in order that he can help Adam Yates as much as he can, because if he's caught in a few Ks, then he'll just be spat out. So he can't just sit up and take it easy. He's got to keep battling on in the hope of being able to get to the top and be able to stay with Michael Matthews in the descent and all the way to the foot of the next climb where he can position him.
Burkhardt as well. Is his day over, or will he have to do a little shift for Richie Porte if he can? But he's been out here for a long time.
Yeah, he'll do his best. He'll realise he's going in the rest now. Aymar Moynard, his teammate, is still there, so that's good. But yeah, he'll just wait and I think Marcus Burgaard, similar situation to Michael Matthews. He's just got to try and pace it up here and be able to help it once he gets over the top.
That's the front of the race. That's Eduardo Sepulveda, the Argentinian climber. He's the next to just drop out of contention a little bit. Tony Galopin's still there, so too is Thomas de Gent. Moina, Nathaniel Barani, Kieselowski, Maika and Villamoz. I think Rui Costa's still there as well. That's the yellow jersey group. And Luis Leon Sanchez is still on the front. They've still got all their men there, Astana. I don't think they've lost any at this point.
No, and they've been in the right position, because we've seen a lot of the damage has been caused off the descents, not so much the climbs. And so because they're at the front, they're the team controlling the pace. It's they don't get caught out by the gaps and the crashes and the stress. So it's oh no, that's a Tom Dumoulin crash. So we're seeing it from the other view. We saw it from the helicopter shot before, and that's it. That's just a caught. And Adam Yates was stuck behind that as well, as we see there on the left. Yeah. So he just got back on, and then he was caught up again.
And that was the moment Rodriguez just got slightly delayed as well, hence the little split that he had to bridge. And that's the danger of being at the back rather than at the front.
It. And at the front, they'll have known nothing about all that apart from what they hear in the team radios, and that's when they will have just kept the pace up high. So it's not an out-and-out attack on them, but it is increasing the pressure.
Well, it's all action, isn't it? Thomas de Gent's going backwards, which is great news if your name is Rafael Maika. That might be the polka dot jersey being decided right there, as the Belgian finds it all too much on the slopes of the Monte de Pisan. They continue to drop away. Slightly surprised to see Nathaniel Barani losing contact with this group that's being powered by the polka dot jersey and Pierre Rolland. 2 minutes and 19 seconds, still plenty of climbing to come on this mountain. Welcome back. Fabio Aru still has 6 lieutenants around him, 1 further up the road as well, Alexei Lutsenko. Breakaway has an advantage of 2 minutes and 13 seconds, and they've still got 7.3 kilometers of climbing. So they are not even halfway up this super category climb, the Monte de Pisan. There is the white jersey of Adam Yates, and as widely predicted, he's moving his way up further and further towards the front, but it's going to come at a cost. This is not what he wanted to happen. He was delayed by the need, we don't know why, but ironically enough for their sponsors, by a bike exchange. He had to get a new bike, and he was paced back on at a point where Astana were driving very hard to the foot of this climb. So he's in the group of favourites, but you can see him there just going around the hairpin. He's not where he wants to be, and this is far from ideal. There was a little moment that David Miller identified a little bit further up the road when he got a bit of a hand here from Luke Rowe, literally.
Well, yeah, Luke Rowe's just dropping back. It's already seen in Stannard. Luke Rowe sees him coming back. He'll have heard on the radio that Adam Yates is in trouble. He just sees him, and it's just a friendly... it is just friendship. If you see one of your friends in trouble, you push, you just give him a little hand.
And this happened a while ago as well. This is another replay of Tom Dumoulin hitting the ground very hard. Now, just watch which bit of his body makes impact with the ground first. It looks like one of his hands gets stretched out. We certainly saw him by the side of the road holding his wrist, and he's had to abandon. And the news from the roadside is that he's left the race. He was clutching his left wrist and elbow, and he was, we understand, in tears.
Yeah, and I think that is very points towards him being aware that it's a serious injury, and knowing possibly that the worst case scenarios come true, that he's crashed and broken something. I really hope not for him, because that's horrible for any rider in this race, but for him, who genuinely is Olympic hopeful, and it's yeah, we can understand that would be a tearful moment.
Well, he's got 2 weeks to recover, and if you've broken a wrist, that probably isn't going to happen.
No, the wrist is one of those injuries that's very hard, takes a bit longer than a collarbone, or those sort of things. A wrist is one of those ones you've got to be very careful with. As Adam Yates, we see here, the amount of efforts he's had to do the last half and now 20 minutes since that bike change, I'm really worried for him that that's going to cost him quite a lot. And you can see he's in the position at the back where it's not comfortable. He has to keep moving up as people keep getting dropped. So he still hasn't got himself into a safe, secure place, which he needs to be in.
Yeah, I'm sure you're absolutely right, David. But there is this sense that Adam Yates likes to be at the back when the selection is small, when that group is small. That's where he tends to ride. So I wonder if he's just settled for that position at the moment and he's not going into the red to move up the line at this point.
No, that's fine doing that, and that's his style. But he's just been chasing on through numerous groups for the last 10-15 Ks. So he'll have been in the red, and and he's normally not that far back at this point. It's normally when it's down to 15 riders.
Yeah,
there's still a lot in front of him, and a lot of those are going to be getting dropped. And each time one is dropped, he's then got to accelerate and move up and replace where they were. So it's and that's what he's doing, and he's still there. But it's going to come at a price.
Meanwhile, that's the breakaway up the road. And it's looking extremely good at the moment for Rafa Majka because Thomas de Gendt has been dropped from that group. I think a few riders have got back on, actually. Natnad Bahani had got back on. This man certainly hasn't. And there they go, Alaphilippe and Tony Martin.
Alaphilippe fighting as usual.
in each other's company on the road to Bern, but there's no way that Tony Martin can latch on to Julien Alaphilippe and get back on to that group, which Adam Yates continues to be last man.
And he's not got, I think that's Daralympia, about 5-6 riders in front of him. So at least he's got one teammate there. And we know Michael Matthews is now dropped and in between the two groups, and will be trying to pace himself up there to make sure he can be there with Adam at the top.
Luis Leon Sanchez, Paolo Tirolongo, Vincenzo Nibali. That's the front of the race. That's Robert Kieselowski working for Rafa Majka. 2 minutes and 1 second, and they've still got 7K of climbing to go. So it's in the balance, actually, whether or not Rafa Majka is going to get over the top on his own. You'd have thought so, because he's one of the best climbers in the world, and he and Kieselowski too are setting the pace of the breakaway group, and there's no reason why they can't go up the mountain any faster or less fast than Luis Leon Sanchez, who's essentially doing all the work for Astana at the front.
And Luis Leon Sanchez has been on the front since the first kilometres chasing, so it's the fact that he's still there, and he's brought this group down to this side. That's been his work. The group has already been dropped because he did a massive amount of work as well. But the moment that Luis Leon Sanchez pulls off and the climbers take over, the pace will be lifted again. And Astana have plenty of wiggle room there. Look, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 riders that Aru has left to work for him. And that's not many riders. So they're Sky standard at the moment. I think Sky are in the same position. They've got a total of six riders there. So actually they're doing better than Team Sky at the moment, which is the first time we've seen Sky outnumbered. And let's not forget, they've still got another rider, Astana, up the road ahead, Lutsenko. And we can see there the gap between the two groups.
There's the breakaway. You can see just going into that wooded section further up the road. 11 riders, maybe a few more have got back on. I think Buchmann might have got back on, so it might be slightly bigger than 11. As Kieselowski works for the polka dot jersey. Pantano's out for another stage win today. That's his motivation. Getting himself in another breakaway. The Colombian man from Iron Cycling won first place and won second place to his credit already on this tour. Bahani and Sepulveda just dropping away. Danny Navarro is still there, but Thomas de Gendt isn't. That's slightly surprising.
Well, he did a lot of the work at the beginning, and perhaps he was hoping to be better than he is. I mean, like we said, he was sprinting over those first two mountains. He obviously wasn't thinking any further ahead than that, and now he's paying the price for that. But his teammate Tony Galopin's still there, as you can see, the number 165. So all's not lost for Lotto Soudal.
The advantage comes down under 2 minutes. 5.3 kilometres of climbing still to go. Julien Alaphilippe takes a bottle from one of his team staff at the side of the road, and he's worked hard to get back on, but he hasn't closed that gap. It's tiny, that gap, but it's going to take an enormous effort for Alaphilippe, if he can at all, to get across to the back wheel of Sebastian Reichenbach.
So this is good now for Adam Yates, seeing the way it is there. He's found that position. There's the stronger riders left. It's not going to be, doesn't have to keep leapfrogging drop riders as the pace settles down a little bit, and the group find its strongest riders. So now he can, or assume the place that he's more accustomed to, and not have to do the big efforts, because he has essentially been chasing for the last 20 kilometres.
He's got bags of racecraft, doesn't he, Adam Yates?
Yeah, he does. I mean,
instinctively.
That comes with what we see over and over again is cool-headedness. It's not so he doesn't get worked up. Although he's very aggressive in his racing, but he never does moves that are unneeded. He's not a rider that goes off and attacks. He's not like Thomas de Gendt, let's say, who goes off and scores mountain points just for the sake of it. I don't think you'd ever see Adam Yates doing that unless he was going to win the jersey. And that essentially sums him up. He'll move when the finish line is near and when it's a move that can actually benefit him rather than just shake things up.
Well, 79 points were the advantage that Rafał Majka had at the foot of this climb. And with only 71 remaining, he actually, assuming Thomas de Gendt doesn't score any points, which you can safely say, because there's only points for the first 10 riders over the climb, Rafał Majka doesn't even have to score any points, and he's sealed it. So this is the King of the Mountains being decided on this climb now.
So Tinkoff will have 2 jerseys secured then before even reaching Paris, with the green jersey of Peter Sagan and the Mountains jersey for Rafał Majka. So that'll be a big day for them. There's Kieselowski of Tinkoff who's setting the pace in the front, Pantano, Rafał Majka, and
14 riders.
So we've got it's the usual suspects that we've seen in this last week's mountain stages are up there.
14 riders have an advantage of just fractionally under 2 minutes, and that's the chase further down the road, with Astana setting the pace, softening it up.
You see Michael Matthews is going to be caught soon, and he won't be able to do much. Still 4.7Ks to the summit, so unless Michael Matthews has really been saving himself in between a little bit, which would be hard, it's going to be difficult for him to cross over.
If Fabio Aru wants to get past Nairo Quintana, and he wants to get past Romain Bardet, and he wants to get past potentially Adam Yates and into the genuine podium contention, now would be a good time to hit them, wouldn't it?
Well, there's still tomorrow as well, and he's seeing that his team's very strong. He's still got so many riders around him. He's perhaps best waiting for one big move on the final climb, and then tomorrow, depending on how that pans out, he can then go for the big, as the Americans would say, Hail Mary attack, going out from further afield. But it's a chance that, as we saw, he's only 2 minutes off the podium. And so he can probably take back, if he's on a great day, a minute on most of them, and then tomorrow he can chip away at it further. But there's no point in risking it all at the moment when they're clearly completely in control.
Yeah, it's a show of defiance and a show of force from Astana, and a show of belief in the man with the white helmets who started underwhelmingly, it has to be said.
And as we see for the first time, Luis Leon Sanchez being relieved slightly of his duties. They've decided clearly that I think that's Tira Longa that's moved to the front to step up the pace a little bit, because Luis Leon Sanchez has been there for so long that it's going to get to a point where he will slow down, and that's what they're trying to prevent happen.
Well, there's snow up there, and that's because the Col de Cessy is a remarkable plateau. The Cessy Pass as well, famous for housing and hiding hundreds and hundreds of members of the French resistance, thousands in fact of French resistance men, fighters in the Second World War, hid on this plateau, and that is where they based themselves basically to attack the Germans. And this was a scene right up here on this mountain pass of an extraordinary action involving 78 Flying Fortresses, B-17 bombers from the US Air Force, flying over from London and flying in supplies to the French resistance up here in the Zaffois, dropping 899 containers of arms destined for the 3,000 men of the resistance who are hiding up there.
There he is, Adam Yates, just sitting there. We see the groups found a good rhythm again, because it's stretched a bit across the road, which is a good sign. It means it's not really flying along at this precise moment in time.
The white jersey of Adam Yates is at the back of the group of favourites, which is getting ever smaller. He's had a tough time of it, Adam Yates, having to change his bike and chase back on, but he is where he is, and he looks as if he is, at the moment, allowed a little bit of recuperation time. The pace is steady by Astana. The advantage of the breakaway riders further up the road is coming down, but not in great big chunks, just seconds here and there, and the summit of this climb getting ever closer for the breakaway. The point at which Rafał Majka can say that jersey is won is imminent. 3.7k to go. It relies on the fact that Thomas de Gendt is not in that group, and Rafał Majka is honing in on his second King of the Mountains jersey. But this is the steepest part of the climb, and it's hurting Nathanael Bani. All black slopes if you look at the profile, David.
Yeah, I mean, it's over 10%. here's Michael Matthews, who has been dropped from the group, so dropped from that front group. So he's going to try his best to stay with Adam Yates for as long as possible. He'll know, he'll have heard on the radio what's been happening behind, and he'll be aware that Adam Yates needs a rider with him for as long as possible, because if he has another mechanical or an incident now, he's only got one rider left, Daryl Impey, so at least he's got two now.
Emmanuel Buchmann, the former German national road race champion, is the next man to be dropped, and Moinard from BMC, the man from Cherbourg, who celebrated the passage of the Tour de France in his hometown on stage 2. Looks like he's in danger as well of falling out of contention. Rafa Majka's barely breathing, enough time to talk to the team car on his radio, and it's job done for him. Of course, he'll continue riding. There's always a chance that this group will stay away, I suppose, and contest a stage win. But his first and primary objective is to nail down this jersey.
Well, it's much to this group's disadvantage now once they come over the top of this, because it doesn't simply drop down and go straight back up again. They've got 25 kilometers of descent and valley roads, and that's going to really benefit this chase here with Astana.
There's De Gent, the only man who could have threatened Rafa Majka today for the polka dot jersey, and he is being brought back into the fold by Astana. He forced the breakaway to get going on the slopes of the first climb, straight from the flag dropping. They went over a 7.5 kilometre climb, and it was De Gent powering away from the peloton that dragged these breakaway riders across to make the first breakaway move of the day stick. And it's beginning to disintegrate on the third categorised climb of the day, the super category Monte de Bissan.
Yeah, there's only 12 riders left in that front group now from the original 20, so it is just slowly and reducing down to what are essentially the pure climbers. There was a bit of a mixture before, but now we can see it's the usual suspects we've seen in the final in the last few stages. They're back up there again.
Yeah, the Tour de France, well, any stage race has a way of filtering out its strongest, almost a distillation every day, and that's why you see the same names coming to the fore over and over again, not just in terms of the general classification. And if you look across this field here, all the top 10 are there, ready to do battle on this slope and the next one, but also in terms of the riders who get up the road in the breakaways. Tends to be the same names over and over again because, quite simply, they're the strongest. Yates looks relatively secure and comfortable in that position. Certainly no kind of great panic or great desire to move up at the moment from him. He looks like he is where he wants to be at the moment.
No, I think a lot of the damage was done in the valley when he was chasing on, and you can see just next to him actually, but on the last of that group, the BMC rider Greg van Avermaet. So that goes to show the pace is fairly steady now. But at the same time, a lot of the damage has been done. They have Michael Matthews just at the bottom of the screen there on the right. Michael Matthews and Daryl Impey. So their job now that the pace has stayed off a bit now, is to make it over the summit and be there right until the foot of the final climb to position and help and fix any situations that may arise for Adam Yates.
He's got Warren Barguil for company, sitting in 20th place in the general classification. It's had quite a bruising Tour de France, actually. Not perhaps the tour that he would have wanted. I'm sure in the back of his mind he'd have been thinking about a top 10 on this year's race.
No, for sure. I think it's been a little bit of disappointment, as was for Thibaut Pinot. But at the same time, we've seen him do some great rides, even in Bern. He really set that up for Degenkolb. Nobody could attack off him. He controlled the race up, the final little kicker. And that was a fine display, especially after it was the day before. I think he'd had the big crash. So it goes to show it's not all lost, and the fact he's still there. I mean, he's still a very young rider, so it's a great performance.
Well, you might have tuned in expecting to see wonderful sun-bathed helicopter shots of Europe's highest mountain today, but the helicopters won't get up there, and that's the reason why. It is shrouded in cloud today, as the temperatures have dropped fully 10 degrees, if not more. The threat of rain, though, has held off, and so far it's been a dry race. Much to their delight, I'm sure.
It's interesting. Well, I think we can definitely be sure that Astana, it would appear to be are basing everything on the final climb today, because they haven't lifted up the pace. They haven't set off an attack here, which you might have expected. They're going for the old-fashioned ride it in and set it up for the final climb, which they certainly have the horsepower to do. But the pace is definitely slowed because the fact that Tiro Longa has taken over, but Luis Leon Sanchez is still there in second place, goes to show that they stopped winding it up, because otherwise Luis Leon Sanchez would have been dropped immediately, considering that he's done a massive amount of work so far, almost 80 kilometers on the front, before with Grivko and now with Tiro Longa.
One rider who'll be particularly pleased that it's not absolutely electrified, the pace at the front of the Astana train at the moment, is Michael Matthews, the rider from Orica Bike Exchange, who's dropped back from the breakaway into that group, and now he is dutied alongside Darrell Impey to look after the white jersey of Adam Yates.
And that's a perfect example of how well that tactic works, how you send a rider up ahead, somebody who wouldn't normally have survived these accelerations from Astana, because let's face it, there's only 25 to 30 riders there now, and normally Michael Matthews, he could on a good day, but you can't guarantee it. The way you guarantee him being there is by sending him up the road so that he can get dropped off and come back.
All our talk of Nairo Quintana, of Adam Yates, of Bauke Mollema, and of Fabio Aru and Romain Bardet, we almost forget sometimes that Chris Froome's winning the Tour de France. It's remarkable how little chatter there is at the moment about the yellow jersey, because as every team and every GC rider has found, there's nothing you could do at the moment in the face of Team Sky's frightening edifice of strength.
No, it's very normal. We've become quite expectant of it, but at the same time, it's good to see Astana there in force. It's the first time we've seen any team show any semblance of power in relation to Team Sky. So that's encouraging, and it does mean that today and tomorrow will be a lot more interesting than they might have been.
Well, Rafa Majka's not got too long to go before his win is guaranteed, and that he'll be standing on the podium for the second time in his career in the polka dot jersey, the famous jersey of the Tour, because Thomas de Gendt is not in this group. It's all panned out beautifully well for the Polish rider from Tinkoff. Rui Costa's still there, George Bennett's still there, Amal Moinard is there, Sepulveda, and Emmanuel Buchmann has dug deep to get back on, but little acceleration there, and he pops off the back again. So it's a horrible outing now for Emmanuel Buchmann, who's just not quite strong enough to live with that selection of climbing talent in the breakaway that's half the size that it was. Blimey, look at that. Sunshine in the valley and dark clouds over these jagged peaks. That's some sight. We're hearing from Team Giant Alpecin, and the abandon of Tom Dumoulin seems to get worse and worse. The feeling is coming from the team that they suspect that his wrist is broken. And that's terrible news for Tom Dumoulin, and that really would put his Olympic participation in grave danger.
Yeah, that'll be very hard for him to deal with.
Yeah,
I suppose that's the thing with the Olympics as well. It's not as if he can come back and do it next year. He's going to have to wait another 4 years if that's the case to challenge for it. And those opportunities don't come around. It's not like the World Championships where you get the annual opportunity. And then there's also the fact that he's on blistering form, and that's quite difficult to input to perfection as well. And he really has timed it to perfection, and then a silly crash happens like that.
that wasn't his fault.
It wasn't his fault at all.
Nothing he could do about it. A rider touched a wheel a couple of places in front of him in the line, and that was it. Might well be it. Dumoulin's gold medal just went west. Well, Paulo Tirolongo has done his stint on the front. Nothing like as long as Luis Leon Sanchez, but he's been riding close to the front ever since Astana decided to take this race on the first climb.
It was a very brief stint, and that's probably why he went up. He felt that he was he's not at his best. Dan Martin's sitting at the back, but that's more likely to get bottles or food, I'd imagine. I'd be surprised to see him in trouble here. And I'm not sure if he's even got any teammates left up there, Dan Martin, which would be why he's dropping back himself to go and get service or simply to speak to the team car.
Nelson Oliveira is being lost to Nairo Quintana. He's the latest Movistar rider to go backwards. Michael Matthews is still there, and there's the white jersey of Adam Yates. Still at the back of that group. Barguil still comfortably there. And the next rider to move to the front, I think, is Tanel Kangat for Astana. So they've still got numbers there, as Nathaniel Bahani is swept up. Eritrean rider for Team Dimension Data, one of two.
So at the moment, Astana have this race completely under control. 1 minute 30 gap. They've still got plenty of riders left to control it and bring it back to almost, they could have it regrouped even before the final climb if they chase hard.
How many riders are left in this selection? About 30. It's been stable though. The that phase of the climb where riders are being shed constantly out of that group has stopped, and it's kind of stabilised itself a little bit. Thomas de Gendt couldn't hold his place in that group, and he's going back out of the group of favourites, straight through and out the other side. Dan Martin looks all right, but he was looking round to see where his team car might be, so that might well be the reason why Dan Martin's at the back. As you identified, David. Through 1 kilometre to go then, until Rafał Majka can seal the deal. 1 minute and 30 seconds is probably enough, so this group will get over. Anxious glances over his shoulder to see where they are, but fundamentally, if I've done my maths right, it actually doesn't matter so long as de Gendt doesn't score. It really doesn't matter what happens, because there aren't enough mountain points for anyone else to affect Rafał Majka left in the Tour de France after today. His lead would be too great, after this climb even. Danny Navarro digging in, digging deep. Rui Costa, Alexei Lutsenko. Don't forget about him, the Astana rider, who's been in the breakaway all day, not working. That's one big horn. Fantastic scenery. We're in the Savoie region of France, up, circling Mont Blanc, the highest mountain in Europe. And I can't remember a Tour de France that's featured Mont Blanc as much. We haven't moved far in the Alps. We've been going around in kind of like tight little concentric circles. The transfers between stages haven't been great.
No, I can't remember that either. It's has been the feature of this final week.
Yeah. But Dan Martin's gone back for a jacket. So you can see him there. He's just got a gilet from the team car. An indication that it's not as warm as it was. And he's thinking about the descent over the other side as well.
There is the risk of rain as well, and so maybe he's just working a preventative nature.
Well, this is the battle for the King of the Mountains competition, but essentially it is over. On the Monte de Pisan, this is a coronation for Rafał Majka. He hasn't won a stage of the Tour de France on this edition, but the Tinkoff man identified quite early on that he would have a good chance, losing time almost deliberately in the general classification, even in the early week, so he could be allowed to get himself in breakaways, which is what you have to do if you're going to eye up the King of the Mountains competition. It's the second time in his career that he will have won the King of the Mountains, and it almost adds to his mystery. He's a great climber. He's got one podium to his name on the Vuelta in general classification terms, but at the moment his career, in terms of the big wins and the GC wins, appears to have stalled somewhat, and he's picking up, if you can call it a secondary prize, well, maybe it's not. He's going to be standing on the podium in Paris alongside the other jersey wearers, alongside his teammate Peter Sagan in the green jersey. Rafał Majka will be wearing the polka dot jersey. Is it enough for him? Is there more in the locker when he moves to a new team, as he will have to when Tinkoff disbands? Perhaps he'll reboot his career and go again, and we'll see him throwing down a more consistent challenge in the general classification. Having said that, he came to the Tour de France having ridden with GC ambitions in the Giro d'Italia. Those came to nothing, ultimately. And so he was never going to be a GC rider on the Tour de France. Identified his ambition of getting this jersey and is duly going to do just that, as Rafał Majka rides himself into an unassailable lead in the polka dot jersey. He is the 2016 King of the Mountains. Tony Galopin rides into second place over that climb. The 25 points, though, just cement Rafał Majka's dominance in that competition, and that jersey is now done. Is this one?
Just dropping back to the back of the group, maybe to get a jacket or something as well, but you would expect his teammates to do that for him. So, an odd move by Chris Froome, so I doubt he won't be at the back of the group for the descent either, so we'll soon know what this is about.
Well, if he was in any kind of trouble, he wouldn't be on his own. He's got loads of teammates still there. Geraint Thomas, 6 or 7 of them. And don't forget, Chris Froome has been known to bluff in the past. He's got that weapon at his disposal. But what's he doing at the back? That is something of a mystery at the moment. Michael Matthews just glances over to see the yellow jersey there. White jersey's gone past him, so Yates and Froome towards the back. The two British jersey wearers in this selection of GC favourites. All smiles between BMC and Astana. And what is Chris Froome up to here?
I have no idea. It's very unorthodox. You can see he's got his 5 teammates up there, 6, including Kirienko on the right, and yet he's back there on his own. So it's definitely not how we usually see him. There's quite a lot of riders there that have never ridden next to Chris Froome on a mountain stage.
Is he tempting? Is he trying to lure a team into an attack too early?
No,
Is
I
that
don't
it?
think so. No. That's just a silly game to play. He doesn't need to do that. I wonder maybe just have a little incident and just drop back. But again, like you said, you'd expect his teammates to go back. No idea.
Well, Romain Bardet's alongside him too. And let's have a look as they go over the top and collect feed bags. Just what develops. Dan Martin's working himself in his rain jacket. Closer to the front, the yellow jersey doesn't seem to be too bothered. He's got Bardet alongside him. They look like they were having a little conversation as well. Astana, though, still have control of the front of the group of favourites, even if the yellow jersey, temporarily at least, has vanished from the picture at the front. Sky beginning to assert themselves with greater numbers. Bauke Mollema all swaddled up. The man from Trek Segafredo lying in second place in the general classification. So a lot of the podium favourites at the moment, strangely close to the back of the group of favourites as they go over the penultimate climb with one more summit finish on the Tour de France still to come. Welcome back. 43.2 kilometres to go, and Pierre Rolland has attacked the breakaway in the company of Rui Costa. Those two have gone clear. They're descending off the big Monte de Pisan at the moment, but David, it's not just a pure story about descending here. It goes down and then up, and it's kind of a little bit lumpy, isn't it, in between here and the foot of the final climb?
Yeah, it's one of those descents. You have these moments, then there are actual moments where you have to pedal. So the kind of little plateaus, and then once they get off this in about 15 k's, they actually have a false flat for about 10 k's. So it's actually quite beneficial to be off the front in a small group rolling through. It's because you can just keep it going. So this group will pause a bit each time it gets to one of those difficult sections, unless Micah goes and attacks again. He did try to bridge across by taking the group, but Pierre Rolland and Rui Costa really have they put the hammer down.
Spots of rain on the lens, you'll have noticed that. Very smooth tarmac here, and if the rain does start to fall, they'll be descending for quite some time still to come. The last climb starts at 9.8 kilometres.
So BMC have gone to the front as well, so it looks like BMC are going to contribute to the chase with Astana.
The yellow jersey, though, who last time we saw him was sort of mysteriously at the back of the group, is right where he was and where you'd expect to find him, surrounded by his teammates, sitting on the wheel of BMC and Astana's lead-out at the moment. Tanel Kangot on the front. Diego Rosa swaddled in white, and yeah, Richie Porter's a couple of riders, Damiano Caruso working for him, and Fabio Aru in the white helmet and the white jacket now as riders start to pull on rain jackets. We've still got Vincenzo Nibali, Jakob Fuglsang and two others actually. Oh, well, that's the end of the attack for Pierre Rolland. He's come off, and he's come off quite hard as well. He's gone down hard on his right-hand side. I wonder if the rain that started to fall has caused that, because you can see it's just getting a little bit damp. Didn't see the incident itself, but that looks bad. That looks like a really nasty fall. Here we go.
I think it's the wet road. Look, is it? Oh. Yeah, that's just wet. And that's what I was saying at the top of the show about different tyre pressures and things as well. Look at this, his front wheel just slides out.
That's just like it's been, you know, struck down by lightning. There's absolutely nothing he could do about that.
No, because you grow accustomed through the day to the dry roads and that tyre pressure, and then when he's coming through that corner, he's probably just a tiny little slip of mind that it's no longer dry, and that he's got dry tyre pressures on, and the front tyres just slid out completely, and he's gone down. Those crashes hurt because the bike disappears from under you, and you really hit the floor hard. And you get no warning, as you saw there. It just, boom, 1 second you're up, 1 second, the next second you're down.
And with Pierre Rolland hitting the tarmac there, the whole French cycling nation sighs, because that was another opportunity to break this barren Tour de France for the host nation. No win for France, no win for Italy, no win for Spain at all. How unusual is that? Well, we think it's never happened. And yeah, there'll be a collective sigh.
You see Rui Costa was still slightly about 200 metres, 300 metres up the road, so he's going to push on his own now. He'll have to make a decision whether he does or whether he waits for that group now and attempts another move later, because he'll have to waste a lot of energy out there on his own compared to that group that will get to ride together.
Good though that group is in terms of its climbing potential, surely you'd not give them a chance of staying away. They've only got 2 minutes, they've got 40 kilometres, and look what's happening behind. It's going to get faster rather than slower behind them.
No, I don't think. I mean, it would be a big surprise if this is the corner where Pierre Rolland crashed, so they're just going through it now. You can see there's everyone's waving their hands, warning them. Yeah. And everyone else makes it through. So.
Well, it's not full-on rain, is it? There's just spits and spats there.
There he is, Pierre Rolland's just rolling off now.
Oh.
So
he's back on his bike.
He's had to wait for a neutral service because the cars are too far back, so he's had to wait all that time, probably on neutral service, if his bike was damaged, which we don't know. But anyway, it's taken quite a long time to get going again.
Well, he has our sympathies, Pierre Rolland. There's Bauke Mollema.
No, I think it's Jaime Zubadia. I think it's Zubadia. I thought it was as well. But
yeah.
That's Zubadia.
Similar physical shape.
Here we go again. The crash. Lucky not to hit that motorbike. Oof.
He's lucky that that's smooth tarmac and not Pyrenean tarmac as well, because that would have just taken all the skin off his back and his side. Yeah, that's horrible. Blimey, that's done some damage. Charlie Wegelius leaning out of the car window there. The British Director Sportif for Canada looking concerned. And looking slightly aghast, actually, at the state that Pierre Rolland is in. That could have been worse, I suppose. At least he was going at speed. Sometimes some of the worst falls, as you've explained to us often, David, are the slower. And he did just slide. I say just slide, but he did slide rather than, you know, what happened to Tom Dumoulin that broke his wrist.
Yeah, no, Tom Dumoulin's bike got caught up with others and it slingshot him over a sort of a little high side, if you like, but this was different. It's the front wheel disappears. The big impact is that initial impact. The slide or the injuries from that, never that bad, but it's that initial impact.
Yeah.
But like you said, the inertia and the slippery road allowed him to slide with it rather than stop dead, which is what happened to Tom Dumoulin.
So, meanwhile, what's happening up front? Well, Rui Costa is on his own. He's got about 30 seconds over this chase group containing Alexis Villamoz and Lutsenko from Astana. And it's still Astana on the front. Tanel Kangat working at the front.
This is interesting to see as well, because it's what we'd hoped regards the GC battle. And we know that Christopher Froome there's no need for him really to attack at the moment. If he's going to do it, he'll do it off everybody else. But Bauke Mollema and Adam Yates, they're in a defensive position in second and third. But you have Richie Porte in 6th place and Fabio Aru in 7th place, who have everything to gain. They're going to want to try and force this race, make it hard to stand a chance of attacking and taking time out and getting closer to that podium.
The suffering continues for Pierre Rolland, and French television are in his face, and he's not particularly enjoying it at the moment. The exposure that he's receiving on French television is humiliating, and they should perhaps leave him alone at the moment, because his race is over, and I just hope for his sake his tour's not over and that he can get to Paris.
No, he looks, well, apart the flesh wounds, he looks okay. The fact he's standing up, he's not checking anything. Often if there is, you try to move around a wrist, or you're touching your collarbone, or just you can't pedal. But I think he's just in shock and just angry, really.
Well, BMC have got a large amount of riders now sharing the work with, or just sitting on the wheels of the two Astana riders who are setting the pace. Their numbers have been swelled by one, because Marcus Burkhardt, who was in that original breakaway, is the 4th rider in that line of BMC riders. So he's got Richie Porte, has Caruso, Michael Scher, and now Marcus Burkhardt working for him. BMC and Astana riding full of intent. Welcome back, 31.2 kilometres to go, and this has just happened. As we can see, the rain is falling on the Tour de France, and I think that's 2 FDJ riders who've gone down hard there, Sebastian Reichenbach and Steve Morabito. But we're also hearing, and we just saw, that Richie Porte was in trouble as well. I'm not entirely sure why. There's no obvious sign that he's gone down, but the BMC riders at the front who are working are definitely waiting for Richie Porte.
I think he just had a little off, so he just had a little off, and but it's nothing that's hurt him. Obviously, nothing that required a bike change. But that's when it happens. It could have just been a slow speed thing, but we might see. Hopefully, they've got some footage of it. But his team that wouldn't have been aware, they're dropping back now.
Yep.
But it already split at the front, because the Astana Kangart was going so fast that it caused a split already. His teammates couldn't hold him. The BMC riders were up there with him.
And it just temporarily stalled Astana's effort on this wet descent now as well, because the BMC riders who were alongside and working with the Astana riders asked them just to steady it down, and it did stall slightly to allow Richie Porte, he hopes, to get back on, but it looks like they're riding again pretty hard, and it's treacherous all of a sudden. The predicted rains have come in, and there's plenty more descending before they go uphill for the last 9.8 kilometres. So there's more descending to come, and Porte is just weaving his way through this wet convoy now.
Well, it's certainly not the worst moment for that to happen, because you can see it doesn't involve a big chase. It's a little bit of a scary chase. You're dodging cars, but it wasn't like the moment Adam Yates had where it was all flat out. Now he can just take his time, stay calm, and not get... Sometimes once you've had a crash in a wet descent, it does put you all edgy, and you start to just doubt yourself in every corner. But you've just got to overcome that and get back in there and go back to normal.
Richie Porte's still got a domestique up the road in Amel Moinard, who's part of this chase group, including Rafa Maika, etc. There he is, there's Moinard. I wonder if he'll be pulled back fairly soon to work for Richie Porte and BMC to try and set things up. Certainly Alexei Lutsenko, who was in that original breakaway, has sat up, and I think he's rejoined this Astana effort at the moment. There's a section, quite a prolonged section of false flat, where it gradually goes uphill, and that's where he'll be working. 55 seconds though, the tête de la course and the sole race leader on the road at the moment, Rui Costa, has over the rest, and that's a powerful man, and he's got a bit of a gap. Richie Porte, well, now he's got
a bit of a gap now, so yeah, no, this hasn't worked out so well. He was stopped for longer than I thought, and because of the rules, there must have already been riders being dropped, and that's caused gaps to open the barrage. There's Adam Yates at the back. He's now got a gilet on, so you can't see the white jersey, just the sleeves of it and the helmet. So he's actually now in a good position, so this is working out well for him, and there's other people who are having troubles now.
There's Romain Bardet, he's there too, safely tucked in alongside the yellow jersey of Chris Froome. Fabio Aru's there, and a lot of Team Sky domestiques still there. Kirienka, Sergio Henau's there, Nieve, Landa, they're all still there. Nairo Quintana's there, Louis Meintjes is safely in that group, so too is Warren Barguil. Alejandro Valverde's there. There's Nairo Quintana just on the wheel of the Spaniard.
I just caught a glimpse, I think, there of BMC riders coming back on. So there's been a bit of disarray there, and that's not ideal. And this is the false flat. This goes on for about 8 or 9 kilometres. So this is an opportunity, and hopefully he won't have to go too deep here, Richie Porte, because we saw he moved up there with BMC and Astana to launch an offensive surely in the final, and now it's been turned upside down a little bit.
Rui Costa has got over a minute now on the rest of the Tour de France. The chase group is going away from him rather than pulling him back. And he's a dangerous man, and even in atrocious conditions like this, he can handle himself, David, when you think back to his World Championship win.
Yeah, the World Championships, that's George Benedict's almost riding into the back of his car. This is not the ideal place to be taking a bottle. About 1:30 the peloton now has behind Rui Costa, so that's actually a bit closer than it indicates on the screen. Now, when Rui Costa won the World Championships in 2012 in Florence, it was, the word is often thrown around in cycling, epic, and that day was, though, truly epic. The weather conditions were atrocious, and it was, in recent years, it was one of the worst performances by the British team, because we didn't have any finish that race. It was that bad. But Rui Costa, Vincenzo Nibali, and it was Joaquim Rodriguez, Valverde that were up there, the 4 of them, and they were really head and shoulders above everybody else in conditions that make this look like a light shower.
Yeah, it wasn't universally well received by the British cycling public, that particular effort on that occasion.
But it had been a big year, so it's the Olympics.
Yeah. The same year that Bradley Wiggins won the Tour de France, for example. So 1 minute 45 seconds, you think that's probably generous, and that the gap is a little bit narrower than that. That's what we're hearing on race radio. But Rui Costa is, well, he picks his moments. He hasn't done much of the work in the breakaway group. He's been sitting on wheels mostly, but he attacked along with Pierre Rolland. Rolland was the first rider when the rain started to fall who came unstuck, and he's hit the deck very, very hard. Richie Porte is half a kilometre further back down the road from this group of favourites. He's got his men alongside him now, and they're all working hard to bring Richie Porte back. He's sitting in 4th position in that group of riders there.
Certainly not ideal.
Drier roads, though, on that section.
It's a 3rd position.
3rd position,
and,
yeah.
But at least he's got teammates with him, because otherwise he would have been in big trouble. So this is where it's worked out, having Marcus Berghardt, first of all, ahead, who's dropped back. There's Michael Schär and Damien Caruso So he's got 3 riders now whose job would have been before to chase down the breakaway or set up Richie Porte for the foot of the climb. Now their job is to get him back into that peloton.
Well, there's a bit of false flat now, so the helter-skelter descending is easing off, but that's not the case that it's definitely over. There's still about, what, 7 or 8k of descending still to do after they've gone over this false flat section, which is a few kilometres long, to the foot of the final climb. So that succession of crashes involving Pierre Hollande, we think possibly Richie Porte, or maybe it was a mechanical, still don't know the precise reason why he was off the back, but definitely Steve Morabito and Sebastian Reichenbach. That should just ease off the carnage just a little while they go slower, essentially, on a false flat section before they descend again. 1 minute and 25 seconds is all that Rui Costa's got now from that yellow jersey group, still being driven by Team Sky, and Daryl Impey moves alongside Astana, I mean, rather than Team Sky. And that's interesting. I wonder why Impey's gone to the front. Is it to slow the pace?
Far from it. It looks like he's driving it now. So that's a great sign for Adam Yates. We were so worried about him before. It looks like he's confident enough to get his teammate to ride.
The signs are good for Adam Yates. The rain is falling and Rui Costa is out in front on his own. Welcome back. Through the rain, you can see Richie Porte, and the good news for him and for BMC is that their man is back on. It's been a full-blooded chase, but he's made contact with the yellow jersey group after being distanced, and riders like Daryl Impey going to the front for Orica Bike Exchange and Astana working quite hard actually to keep him off the back, but good effort from Richie Porte. He's got back on, but at what cost? Much like Adam Yates, that'll have hurt Richie Porte and might well harm his chances of launching an attack on the climb. The final climb still to come, if that's what he had in mind. The climb up to Le Betex, which begins at 9.8 kilometres to go. Meanwhile, up front, Rui Costa has a minute's advantage over the second man on the road, and that's Dani Navarro from Cofidis, who attacked the rest. Big chunks of that breakaway, though, including Rafa Majka and George Bennett, have been swept up already, so pretty soon I think it'll only be Rui Costa and Navarro that stand between the finishing line and this furious chase still being set up by Astana for Fabio Aru of the yellow jersey group. There are 34 riders in that yellow jersey group, but I think their numbers have just swollen since BMC got back on for Richie Porte. There's the man in second place, Dani Navarro, who's had a really decent Tour de France. Got himself close to a win on Chalet Renard when he battled very hard to get back on terms with Thomas de Gendt. In the end, that paid for that effort, and it looks like he's paying for this effort. And there you can see that Team Astana are about to sweep up the second man on the road, and then they'll just have Rui Costa left. And this is all going to come back together again, and the stage win is going to come from this group.
Yes, it is, and we can see Daryl Impey still there. We felt the chase accelerated a little bit when Richie Porte was off the back. I think there was a subtle acceleration for him, not so subtle actually, but in order to make his life a little bit harder to get on, which he just had to go through what Adam Yates went through earlier in the stage, although it lasted a lot longer for Adam Yates.
Alexei Lutsenko is the man driving the pace at the moment, and he was the Astana rider in the breakaway, not contributing to the pace setting in the breakaway for precisely this reason, because he's come back as the racers concertinaed back together again, and now he's probably got reasonably fresh legs and can work for Fabio Aru in these flatter lands, take them over to the next point of descent. And Daryl Impey's sharing the work with them. There's Lutsenko with the more aerodynamic closed helmet on. And Luis Leon Sanchez just patting him on the back. That's an extraordinary ride by Astana. They haven't really shown this strength in depth on the Tour at all up to this point, but they've obviously identified today Aru's feeling his legs are good, and they really want to make an impact on Aru's chances.
It's been a very impressive ride from today, and tactically as well. Lutsenko coming back. Luis Leon Sanchez has ridden since the first kilometres and is still there, and I think he was going up to just having a chat with Lutsenko to see how he was feeling and seeing what he was capable of doing and what he wanted to do. Because that's where you have to communicate amongst yourselves and know who's feeling, how each rider's feeling, and knowing what to use them for. If I should correct as well, at the moment, Rui Costa won a 2013 Worlds, not a 2012.
Similar conditions, though. I don't think Rui Costa's going to manage a win here on stage 19. and also in 2013 when he took his last win on the Tour de France. He also won on stage 19, Rui Costa. So he waits until everyone's absolutely spent on the Tour de France, and then he identifies a stage to go for. He's a wily bike racer, is Rui Costa, but I think he's bitten off more than he can chew today.
Yes, the GC races definitely on, and different GC races. It's fascinating and also encouraging to see Daryl Impey of Orica Bike Exchange on the front, and he's another rider who's had an amazing Tour de France. He's somebody who's usually a lead-out man and somebody who can win bunch sprints himself, and yet we've seen him climbing like never before the last 3 weeks.
Kirienka, Thomas, Sergio Henao, Froome, Landa, Nievi, Pouls, pretty much everyone there apart from Luke Rowney and Stannard for Team Sky. Through 20 kilometres, Rui Costa takes the race. So the Portuguese, former world champion of 3 years ago, is at it again, trying to notch up another stage win on the Tour de France. And this is precisely how he does it. He gets himself in a breakaway, he attacks the breakaway, he's the strongest man on the day. But it does rely normally on a GC race allowing him the stage win, and it's not going to be the case today, because Astana have taken the race by the scruff of the neck ever since the first uncategorised climb of the day. With that strange attack, they just rode to the front, rode off the front, and eventually Fabio Aru came with them.
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily attack. I think it was them riding to the front to start setting a high tempo. Nobody wanted to go on their wheels, so they were kind of left out there, the three of them, wondering what to do. Then eventually it did kick off, and it hasn't stopped since, and that was probably after only 5 kilometres or 6 kilometres of the stage. So it's been a big day out for everyone. It could have potentially been that group of 20 riders that got away in that last climb would normally, you'd expect, be here. Reduced a little bit, but getting ready to prepare for the stage win with a 10-15 minute advantage. But no, Astana have prevented that from happening.
Well, we haven't seen many of these images on this Tour de France, but it is now wet, seriously wet. The cameramen are struggling to give you a unblurred image of Rui Costa descending. Part of the race is so steep you can't even pedal. Just gets himself into an aero tuck and reads the race, treacherous as it is, the road, as well as he possibly can on these corners. Sebastian Reichenbach, Steve Morabito, Pierre Rolland, they've all gone down hard. Rolland was on the attack and his stage is over. So these are dangerous times for every single rider in general classification contention. One momentary lapse of concentration, and that's your Tour de France and 3 weeks' work undone.
And also, the biggest fear as well is the rider in front of you, or few in front of you, having a momentary lapse in concentration. It's you're totally dependent on the abilities and concentration of every single rider in front of you.
8 more kilometres of descending or thereabouts before it does kick uphill. It's going to be fast. Michael Cherel from AG2 La Mondiale moves to the front. So Orica Bike Exchange Astana and AG2 La Mondiale riding for Adam Yates, Fabio Aru and Romain Bardet respectively. These are the 3 players in terms of moving themselves up or defending their podium places.
Yes, there's certainly 3 races that are chasing a podium spot, and if they want to achieve that, then they have to start attacking today before deciding what tactic they go for tomorrow. So today they've gone for the more conservative tactic, let's say, of leaving it all till the final climb, and hoping that they can crack the Bauke Mollema and Adam Yates, and Nairo Quintana, because he's in 4th place, let's not forget. But these 3 riders and these 3 teams are really chasing this.
Adam Yates is still at the back of this group. If you're looking for him, you won't spot the white jersey at the moment because he's got a blue gilet on but a white helmet, and he is right at the back. He's got a rider at the front in Daryl Impey sharing the work with Cherel and Lutsenko, and there's another rider, Trek Segafredo rider's gone to the front.
Bauke Mollema.
It's not Mollema himself, is it?
I think so. Sometimes the safest place to be is right at the front. It's like, as I was saying, there's been a crash at the back of this group, apparently. I've just heard on race radio. We haven't seen it, but...
Well, let's wait till we get visuals on that. You're listening to race radio all the while, and sometimes these things happen in the flash of an eye, and you're not entirely sure where. And now they're on dry roads. So out of the wet and into the dry. Michael Cherel leads... I'm not sure that is Mollema. Anyway, little gaps appearing, and they're definitely forcing the pace. Where's the yellow jersey? Well, he's there, just sitting on Astana's train at the front of the train of Sky riders. Daniel Martin has moved himself closer to the front, and I think that's Nairo Quintana as well in the yellow helmets. So the favourites are at the front of the race. Still got Rui Costa to catch, though, and he's still got 58 seconds, so they haven't got him yet. But on the descent, I suppose everyone's moving at roughly the same pace, especially a descent as quickly as this. You can't even pedal, so everyone's moving at roughly the same speed.
No, especially when it's wet, because normally the peloton goes faster and carries that speed through the corners, but when it's wet, the peloton has to slow down. There's only a terminal velocity you can go around the corner in the wet on a bicycle, so the peloton has to slow down to that, and it allows a lone breakaway or a small break to maintain a lead that normally they wouldn't be able to.
Left-handed, another right-hander coming up imminently for Rui Costa. Scrubs off all his speed here. This is a sharp one, and that's a dangerous corner in these conditions. Cherel's gone right off the front, and he looks over his shoulder, and there's a huge gap that's opened up there to Darrell Impey again, and another gap to the Astana-led train of favourites.
And where's the Trek Segafredo rider? That's interesting, because that's maybe why the gap goes. Yep, Mollema. So it was him in second place, and obviously he's had an incident, and that's what, he's crashed, I think.
Well, Bauke Mollema, lying in second place, is the next rider to go down. We've seen damage to a number of riders, but this is the first of the big GC favourites in a podium position to have hit the deck. So Mollema's got a couple of teammates with him. I think Frank Schleck and Jaime Zubeldia might be the men looking after him and guiding him back towards the front, but looking for signs now of where he might
on the
have
left-hand side. So he's gone down on the left, so Rip Short's on the left. So he was in second place, as we thought, and he's gone down. So where we thought he was in, normally that would be the safest position, I think Mikel Cherel had a little bit more ability than Bauke Mollema, and Bauke Mollema trying to follow him meant that he went down.
Well, if you fall wherever, regardless of where you are in the pace line.
Well, the point being at the front, it means you've got less people to worry about falling in front of you.
Yeah.
But still, that didn't help him.
So Bauke Mollema is the next man after Yates and Ports to be put into difficulty at the back and have to chase back on. There is Fabio Aru with a white helmet, though, and everything's gone according to his plan so far. He's tried to soften up the race. Chris Froome in the yellow jersey is just where he wants to be, with Nairo Quintana firmly in his sights, just in front of the leader of the Tour de France, Chris Froome. One more Alpine stage to come, one more GC race to come after today for Chris Froome. He is tantalisingly close now to being able to celebrate this win.
So when he comes off this route, costing a few hundred metres, there's then 2-3 kilometres flat before the summit of the climb. Sorry, the bottom of the climb. And that's where he's going to probably lose a little bit more time. On the descent, he won't have lost any time, as we've seen, but on that flat section, we're going to see the last efforts put in by those teammates that have been holding themselves, that know they can't contribute on the actual climb.
Final climb of the day, Saint-Gervais-Mont Blanc, was used on last year's Dauphiné, and guess who won that? Chris Froome, and he was paced all the way up by Wout Poels on that particular occasion.
So a little slip there, Rui Costa, so he's on the edge. Mikel Cherel's now got a gap. That gap was created from that Bauke Mollema crash, who was on his wheel, and now the peloton's behind. There's not really much point in Mikel Cherel waiting. He may as well carry down. Oh, there we go.
Well, who's gone down? Sepulveda. So that's Danny Navarro, I think, and George. Is that George Bennett or Wilco Kelderman?
Wilco Kelderman, by the looks of it.
Yeah, Ilnur Zakarin. So those were partly riders who were in the original breakaway and partly riders who were in that group of favourites who've gone down. None of the big GC men, though, I don't think affected in that little fall. And it happened right in front of Bauke Mollema again. So Mollema, how does he get around this? You can see him with the black shirt. Does he go off-road there? And he just negotiates a path round that group of riders.
Holding his shoulder, Navarro. That's not good. I hope he hasn't broken his collarbone. But we can see just the chaos the rain's bringing. And this is...
well, it's his leg as well. He's getting medical attention from the doctor.
It's a big slice.
Oh, now what's happened? Well, that was one of the Trek Segafredo riders. Where's Mollema? Watch
Mollema's second.
Mollema's second
That's
wheel.
Zubeldia.
Yeah, he's gone off. He's just to manage to scrub off enough speed not to go down the side of that escarpment.
And this is what happens when you're at the back and it starts to get nervous. And they're having to chase back on. Romain Bardet's made an attack, so he's made an attack, and it looks like Diego Rossa on his wheel. So Mikel Cherel's been off the front, and Romain Bardet has now bridged across.
So that's an interesting move from Romain Bardet on a descent, of course, and it was set up by his teammate Mikel Cherel. And there's Chris Froome. So Chris Froome is the latest to have gone down. He's wheeling his bike to the side for the second time on the Tour de France. He needs a new bike. Wout Poels is on hand to give him his, and Froome is up and running. We didn't see what happened. We only saw the aftermath. We don't know if he has gone down at this point, but he is the next big name rider to be a casualty on this wet descent.
And the problem is, because of the multiple crashes behind, the car's going to be stuck here. We're going to see it here, I think, I hope. Here he comes in.
Error from Chris Froome.
And he's got on the white line. On the white line. Front wheel on the white line.
And the Astana rider goes down behind him as well. And, well, that's Vincenzo Nibali just rolling to a halt alongside the yellow jersey.
So they were chasing Bardet. That's what happened. So they put themselves on trying to chase Bardet. Nibali, who's one of the best descendants in the world. Nibali. But the problem is, it was so slippy. We saw Chris Froome moment to hit the white line. The front wheel disappeared. And Nibali would have just touched his brakes to try and avoid it. And his wheels disappeared as well. And now the problem is the Team Sky car is going to be quite blocked far behind with all these crashes. But look at the gap that Bardet's got. So this is a great move from Bardet. And I have to ask, if that was planned, then it was amazing, because Chirel to get in that gap, and then Bardet having the confidence to bridge across on a wet descent where everyone else is crashing.
There's Chris Froome. Where are his teammates? For sure they'll be there. They still have strength in numbers. Actually, that's Wout Poels there in front of him, and I think Vasil Kirienka. So they have dropped back now to pace the man back on. Louis Meintjes is there for Lampre Merida, but there's Chris Froome, and the first sign of a problem since Mont Ventoux and since that incident that left him running up the mountain for Chris Froome. Not far now until Michael Chirel leads Romain Bardet onto the foot of this climb. There is another man, Bauke Mollema, getting paced on. So gaps opening up for first and second in the general classification. They're both in trouble at this point of the race. Through 10 kilometres, Rui Costa, almost forgotten in the midst of all this drama, is the lone leader, and he is starting to climb in the next 200 metres.
And that descent has just wreaked havoc on the race, and it goes to show that sometimes, and that's also because the rain came last in the race.
Oh!
It's fairly big, but at least he's not injured, otherwise we'd know that. He wouldn't be pedaling, we'd notice something. Now, I just got to ride that bike. I presume it's Geraint Thomas's bike, so I think that's the only bike. Yes, it is. It's Geraint Thomas's bike. So Geraint's handed that off, so he's lost Geraint. But that would have been a planned move. They'll have said, if something happens, Geraint, you give him your bike. So it'll be the only one that comes close to fitting him.
Those are the gaps on the road. Let's have a look. So there, that pair of Michael Chirel and Romain Bardet have sprung a surprise on the whole race. Astana have a domestique just looking over his shoulder, and Fabio Aru is leading the best of the rest, but groups all the way down that long straight road.
That's Diego Rosa, so he was up there. So Danny Navarro, we just heard on the radio, is abandoned, so I have a feeling that was split. It's chaos out there. So that's Diego Rosa, I think, in third place, who had done a brilliant descent and come down with Bardet, but then realised, I think, because of the Chris Froome and Vincenzo Nibali crash, that it was all going crazy. He's dropped out and now going back to help his teammates that are left behind. And we can see Team Sky are bringing this back on. That's Vasil Kirienka. They're lucky to have him there. So he's the powerhouse that's bridging back up to that group.
Absolutely the man you need, the world time trial champion, to bring you back. And the yellow jersey, battered, bruised and ripped, is being brought back to the group containing Fabio Aru, Nairo Quintana, and the white jersey, let's not forget about him, of Adam Yates. Where is Bauke Mollema in this confused picture on the road at the moment as Romain Bardet drops Michael Chirel. Chirel has done everything that he possibly could for his team leader, and Bardet now is on the hunt. Can he get across to Rui Costa? That's his first target. 1 minute and 41 separates Rui Costa from Chris Froome further down the road, but the gap is much narrower between this man, Rui Costa, and Romain Bardet, who has sprung a brilliant surprise attack. Tomorrow was supposed to be the day, with its descent to the finish line, that with conventional wisdom he would have identified, but he's done it today instead in brilliant fashion. Bardet, the man of the moment and the winner at the moment, but they've only just begun the climb.
There you go, Team Sky getting some organisation back in there. They've got rejoined back with that group, with the Astana-led group. And if anybody questions, well, should Astana be doing this when the yellow jersey's down? They have every right to, because this is just a race situation. We saw that was nothing other than a mistake, and you can't just give away time for things like that. So, and we saw so many instances, and also one of their leaders, if you like, Vincenzo Nibali, went down behind Chris Froome. So, again, like we saw earlier in the day, there doesn't seem to be any gifts being given to anybody today.
Looking for Bauke Mollema, and he's not in that group, I don't think. So the rider in second place, and this is good news for Chris Froome, because if he is struggling, if he is hurt, and if he is going to lose time on this climb, and we don't know that just yet, never rule out Chris Froome, then at least the man in second place in the general classification is also out the back.
And I think also we have to remember Chris Froome will still have a bike change when he can, I'm sure of that. Once the Team Sky car gets up there, he will have his bike changed, because he won't want to be riding up there on Geraint Thomas's bike, because it is a different bike. And let's not forget, Geraint Thomas doesn't have the asymmetric rings that Chris uses, so he will definitely want his bike once that car gets up there. But it's going to have to pick through everybody.
9.8 kilometres in total, this final climb of the day, up to Saint-Gervais-Mont-Blanc-le-Betex. Chris Froome knows it. He won here last year on the Dauphiné. It's an 8% average gradient, so it is a tough Cat 1 summit finish. That's the group of favourites.
Adam Yates sitting there comfortably now in that front, probably about 10th position next to the Movistar yellow helmet Movistar riders. So at the moment, Adam Yates has gone from having the worst day to the best out of all those leaders. It's all going slightly wrong for the top three on GC, top three, top four.
Well, yeah, exactly.
That's the whole podium have had incidents today.
And this man hasn't. So Chris Froome has hit the deck back. Mollema's gone down. Adam Yates has needed a bike change, and he's been gapped. Quintana, he's been okay all day. He's just been hiding in that group of favourites. But Bardet is the big mover of the day. He started the day in 5th place, 20 seconds down on Nairo Quintana. And 41 seconds down on Adam Yates and a podium position. So he's riding himself right into contention at the moment. Can't go too deep into the red. There's a lot of climbing still to do. And don't forget, he is pulling back Rui Costa all the while. He was 45 seconds down at the foot of the climb, and he's shaved off the best part of 20 seconds already in the first kilometre. So Rui Costa is coming back to Bardet, who will be supremely motivated by that brilliantly set up attack.
And there's Chris Froome still at the back, still on Geraint Thomas's bike. And we can see the pace hasn't been lifted so much yet, and that's why actually they're losing time to Rui Costa, whereas Bardet is moving up, and that will be because I think everyone's just a bit confused as to what's going on. Astana has used up a lot of guys trying to bring this all together, keep it together. Lost Vincenzo Nibali, we don't know if they've lost any other riders in that descent. Bauke Mollema, we don't know where he is. And Rui Costa, in the meanwhile, is having the safest ride of the race here. He's in the best place, up the front on his own, away from all the trouble.
Well, we were saying what an relatively incident-free Tour de France this has been, and to how few occasions that the yellow jersey has been put under pressure. Today, that's all changed, and it's changed in the most dramatic fashion. A drop of rain, a touch of a wheel on a white line in the middle of a fast descent, and that is what happens. But he's okay. He's not on his bike. He's got teammates to work with him and alongside him. At what point is Fabio Aru, having signalled his intention all day, ever since the race started today, going to unleash his attack?
And I want to know where the team cars are, if they're there, because surely have to. And there we go. That's Wout Poels, I think, going back, trying to find out what's going on, because he needs his own bike. I mean, the fact that he's able to do this and stay at the front of Tour de France after a crash on a teammate's bike just goes to show how strong Chris Froome is.
What was that shake of the head all about? Paul's asked him a question.
Just be angry. He'll just be angry about where's the team car? Where's my bike? I want my bike. Is Ventoux all over again? And that's because the reason being for that, the cars are normally very close to close to the back of that front group. But because of all those crashes, they kept getting stopped all the way down that descent, so the cars could be minutes back.
Geraint Thomas's bike being ridden by Chris Froome up the final climb, the penultimate Alpine stage, and the first time since Mont Ventoux that the yellow jersey has been put into some difficulty. There he is, not in his familiar place at the front, but just dangling awkwardly towards the back and waiting once again, as he did on Mont Ventoux, for a new bike. Would you believe it? It is extraordinary how it's repeated itself for Chris Froome on the final climb of the day.
Can we see the team cars behind it? Are there any there? Because Team Sky, obviously being yellow jersey, they're car number 1. So they'll battle through first, but there's still no sign. We still can't see the team cars. Also, Bauke Mollema, we can't, we're hearing the radio is 130 behind now. Is that 130 behind Rui Costa or the yellow jersey group? They're not saying, but I can't see him in that shot when we look back. So I'm wondering whether it is 1 minute 30 back from the yellow jersey group, which is a big thing for Adam Yates primarily, who's in 3rd place, who would automatically move up to 2nd.
Yeah, he would indeed, unless Romain Bardet produces an exceptional ride, which he's doing. Adam Yates just has 24 seconds to make up on Bauke Mollema, and on the road, so we understand, he's already made them up. Bardet, meanwhile, is tracking down Rui Costa. When's he going to actually get sight of him further up the road? Not round that. There he is, round that hairpin now. Bardet knows exactly what he has to do to get across to the Portuguese, and he is doing it. 45 seconds, David, with 9.8 kilometres of climbing to do. He has wiped that away in, well, probably in under 2 kilometres.
Well, he's flying. We've seen him do this before twice. We saw the Criterium de Dauphiné last year and the Tour de France, going on the descent and then maintaining that lead on the climb, which very few people can do. But he's storming up there at the moment.
Still no team car. He's not going to take a Mavic bike, you can be sure of that. Tried that trick on Mont Ventoux and it didn't work too well and left him running up the mountain.
And that's it. That's only one domestique left now. So Diego Rosa, who's on the front for Aru. So
it's nearly go time for Aru.
Astana have gone from having a full band of brothers, and now down to 1 thanks to that descent.
8.1 kilometres remaining for Rui Costa, and if he looks over his shoulder he'll see that Romain Bardet has exploded the race behind, attacking with Michael Chevel on a descent, getting enough gap and taking a sizable advantage onto the foot of this final climb. And Bardet is rising up the mountain and rising up the general classification all the while, and he's in second place on the road, but he won't be for long. When he gets onto Rui Costa's wheel, will Rui Costa be able to react, or will the man from France just rip past him? There are the time gaps on the road, and Bauke Mollema is some, 24 seconds behind the yellow jersey group containing the white jersey of Adam Yates. So he's almost, there he is, Bauke Mollema. At this point in the race, he's all on his own, and he's handing over second place effectively to Adam Yates in the white jersey, who has surmounted his own difficulties, don't forget, today. There's the catch. Romain Bardet has Rui Costa for company now.
Well, 24 seconds is exactly what separates Mollema and Adam Yates. So at the moment they're joint second place. 125, so Mollema's going distance. He's in the worst. He's not got any teammates left. He's there on his own, and we saw, whereas this group has teammates dragging it. So look at, there's a solo chase. It's one of the loneliest chases he'll ever have.
And you can see by the state of his racing shorts there, he's been down, Mollema, so he's going to be sore as well. He's got a cut to his left elbow. One of a number of riders, including Chris Froome, of course, the yellow jersey, who have gone down hard today. Richie Porte's also had to chase back on. So has Adam Yates. So virtually everyone has been put under pressure. This is a moment that Geraint Thomas effectively ended his race for the day and handed over his bike to his team leader, who is on the radio again and asking for his bike.
This is what they have to go back there to lift the arm, but they know that. The race organisers should know this situation. They should be calling and waving through and ignoring the barrages, because that's what they call it when they block the cars. And there we can see team, that's behind, so that's where a lot of team cars are stuck. That's Richie Porte. So no, that's Astana made up. We still don't see Team Sky. That could be them just arriving, in which case we'll see a bike change soon, I'm sure of it.
Rui Costa's sitting on the wheels here. He's done well to not be dropped by Romain Bardet, and he might be capable of going again, Rui Costa, and just not sharing the work at all, allowing Romain Bardet to do all the work. And who would bet against Rui Costa snatching victory from Romain Bardet, who has been, so far, the star of today's race. But we've still got 6.9 kilometres to go. 1.7 the advantage that Romain Bardet at the front has to the yellow jersey group. And there's Bauke Mollema being put into trouble all the while, now by Diego Rosa, who's lifting the pace to set up a Fabio Aru attack, and it's just desperate for Bauke Mollema, who's all on his own on this mountain.
This is turning into a case of damage limitation. It's going to be very hard for him to... He's limiting losses, but the bottom line is he's going to lose out here, because there's so many riders up there that are untouched, unscathed, who haven't had to go through what he's gone through the last few kilometres, and who still have teammates left. Movistar still have teammates. Team Sky does, BMC, Astana, and he's there on his own chasing.
Well, a minute, that's what, or thereabouts, that's what Romain Bardet has on the yellow jersey group. If that race were to stop now, Romain Bardet would be about 3 minutes and, well, call it 4 minutes down in the general classification, and that would put him on the podium. 52 seconds, it's coming down a little bit though. Has Bardet begun to pay a little bit for those early efforts? Can they still get across to Romain Bardet? It would break French hearts if they did.
Look at this, Chris Froome's on his teammate's bike, a bike that doesn't even fit him, and doesn't use the asymmetric rings that he always rides. So this is crazy that he can do this, and he's looking good still.
He's recovered, Chris Froome, and he's got Wout Poels with him as well. They latch on to Diego Rosa.
And I think he's made a decision. The team car's there. I think he's decided he can do this on his teammate's bike, which in itself is awe-inspiring for me, for somebody who's done this for years. And I don't know many professional cyclists that could do that.
It's that much of a difference.
That much of a difference, and especially the fact he's on round rings now, and he uses asymmetric all the time. The oval rings are what he uses. So now he's on a round ring bike on a different saddle height, different handlebar setup, and yet he's just there looking like Chris Froome, getting it done.
Diego Rosa is burying himself here for his Astana team leader, who is nowhere to be seen. He's riding in about 8th position and not looking like a man who's twitching to attack the race. All that work by Astana, and we are 5.8 kilometres from the summit finish here, and still no move by the man with the white helmet. Can he just simply not attack? Well, his teammate is the one who's setting the pace, Diego Rosa.
Yeah, it's interesting, but we know from Aru in the past he's quite astute tactically as well, and if he does go, he might do one massive one and with 2 or 3 Ks to go, or 2 Ks to go. Now look at Diego Rosa's going so strong. He's eating into into that time gap to Bardet,
isn't he?
which is Arudis needs Diego Rosa to do the majority of the work at the moment and eat into that lead so he doesn't have to do it himself. And once Diego Rosa's done, then that's when the race will become bad. That's when I think Wout Poels will take over and try and control it all the way to the finish. Wout Poels sitting there in second place. Chris Froome's moved back up. The order is they've rediscovered kind of this is what the race is supposed to look like, but it's not supposed to look like this all the same.
Yeah, order is restored, but chaos on the way to reaching this orderly position again. You can see the blood on the yellow jersey. Blood on the yellow jersey. Chris Froome is doing it the hard way today, that's for sure. Damiano Caruso is the domestique working for Richie Porte. Chris Froome has the best domestique of all working for him. Once again, Wout Poels, there's Dan Martin for Etixx Quickstep, Nairo Quintana, Alejandro Valverde, Joaquin Rodriguez, Roman Kreuziger hanging in there. And then Fabio Aru with the white helmet, and behind him the white jersey of Adam Yates. 5 kilometres to go now for the 2 leaders up front. Romain Bardet and Rui Costa have a shrinking advantage because Diego Rosa is flying up the mountain and bringing all the favourites with him.
Diego Rosa really is flying there. You can see the way it's all strung out, and he's even in his drops. I think that's done. He just used himself up, and now we'll see that Biancia moving us. That Caruso is going to take over because they know what Wout Poels is going to do.
This is being set up by Richie Porte, is it?
I think they're just going to accelerate a bit more, use up Caruso and try and eat into that gap again because they know Wout Poels doesn't want to bring back that gap. He just wants to look after his team leader.
Well, Bauke Mollema has picked up a bit of accidental or incidental support in the shape of Jarlinson Pantano and Rafa Majka, who are going backwards. I don't know how much use that will be for him, but at least he's got a bit of company in his exercise of damage limitation. At the moment, he has handed over, effectively, second place to Adam Yates. He's got a gap of 30 seconds, and Adam Yates only needs to make up 24 seconds on Bauke Mollema to overtake him and move into second place.
So now it's Caruso's job to eat into this as much as possible, and then after that point, it's down to Richie Porte to do the work himself. Because if he wants to go on the podium, he's got to get Romain Bardet is 1 place in front of him at the moment. He doesn't want to concede any time to him. And he'll know that this time gap's coming down quickly, and there's not much he can do about it at the moment because there are some super domestiques just giving it their all to bring him back.
That effort by Diego Rosa has taken a big chunk out of Romain Bardet's advantage and might have dented his morale as the group of, Mollema group come up to that 5 kilometre banner, and I don't know whether sitting on Pantano's wheel and not accelerating away from Pantano and Majka suggests that Mollema is on the limit here, because perhaps you would suggest if he's really chasing and form, he'd have to leave these riders and go it alone.
Yeah, I think he's having trouble even holding Pantano's wheel there. So, no, I think he's pretty spent.
That's 1 minute now, Mollema, to the group of yellow jersey. Mollema is seeing his second place go west, and it might be at the end of the day that he's actually off the podium. 4.4 kilometres of racing remain for Romain Bardet to try and improve his position in the general classification and outfox Rui Costa to get himself a stage win, but they are charging across the gap to deny both those men that opportunity.
And this is an unexpected bonus, if you like. One man's bad luck is another's good luck. And for Richie Porte, he's now not even having to attack to move up a place on GC. But they do need to bring back Romain Bardet. And then I think once they get close to there, hopefully, if it's like the other mountain stages where Richie Porte has often been the strongest and the most attacking, we'll see that happen again. But they're all looking like they're at their maximum at the moment, which is understandable because that has been a frantic last few Ks and a very demanding day. Right from the beginning, the pace has been on.
Now, a side product of the fact that, well, let's just see that Damiano Caruso moves to the front and Richie Porte's on his wheel. I think Richie Porte has said go. Go as long as you can, for as hard as you can, for as long as you can, go as hard as you can, and then let me attack. So Porte's on his wheel, and any minute now I think we're going to see an attack from Richie Porte. Nairo Quintana is right on him.
Watch Wout Poels, he's closing the gap slowly. Sergio now jumped onto him, but Wout Poels is so strong, he can go, look, I'll just take you out from slowly. So he kept looking under his arm, checking that Chris Froome's there, because he doesn't want to hurt him and make him do those big accelerations.
Under 4 kilometres to go for the group of favourites being spearheaded at the moment by Damiano Caruso, surely setting up an attack for Richie Porte. Porte is looking full of intent. Romain Bardet, who attacked on the descent and took a big time gap onto the foot of this climb, is beginning to see his advantage dwindle now. Just 30 seconds remain, and he's got 3.6 agonising steep kilometres of climbing in which to hang on. I don't think it's going to be Bardet's day necessarily. And Wout Poels has dragged the yellow jersey with the company of Sergio now back across.
But keep watching Wout Poels. It's like he's got eyes in the back of his head. He's constantly looking around, making sure Chris Froome's okay. Look at that, second place Skyrider, constantly making sure Chris Froome's okay. And that just goes to show the loyalty he has, and also how comfortable he is. He's going to stick with him and make sure that Chris Froome gets the smoothest ride possible to the summit.
One white jersey goes backwards. Warren Barguil beginning to lose contact with that group. The other white jersey in front of him belongs to Adam Yates, and he is where you often see him when the distillation is made and the selection is made. He's just at the back of group of favourites. Now, Bauke Mollema, last time we saw, is in the next group on the road, and he's just getting a bit of shelter from Jarlinson Pantana, but he's a minute further down from the group of yellow jersey and going backwards. Richie Porte is on the front now. And Dan Martin attacks, so Martin's the next rider to make a move. We've seen this repeatedly. This is the third time that Dan Martin on uphill finishes has attacked. He's doing it again here. He gets a little bit of an advantage. He's got Sergio Henao and Wout Poels, though, bringing the rest of the race across to him. Can he make this one stick and get himself a stage win, get across to Rui Costa and Bardet, and then go past them? Bardet has now cracked Rui Costa, and he's gone. So this is all or nothing now for Romain Bardet. 3.2 kilometres, still got around about 30 seconds to take a win, but Martin is attacking from the group of yellow jersey favourites.
And that's quite a long way out for Dan Martin. Normally he goes a bit later, but it's interesting to see that Richie Porte's still sitting there, and I think Richie Porte, we've seen him more often go around the 2k mark, so this is quite good for him. He'll let Sky control it for a bit, maybe let Dan Martin get a gap, and if he's feeling good, he's going to go. He just spoke to Chris Froome and he goes. I think he actually gave Chris Froome a warning. He's like, I've got to go. And there's Quintana going as well.
Quintana reacts as well, so Porte and Quintana, they go. It's not a full-blown acceleration from Richie Porte there, and he doesn't get much of a gap initially as they go through 3 kilometres.
So that was interesting to see Richie Porte just give the glance to Chris Froome, and I'm sure he just said almost regrets, apologetically, I've got to go. And look at Wout Poels again. Look at the Sky teammates. Look at them. They just keep looking behind. They know they've got this race under control. And Quintana's there. The first time we've seen Quintana looking quite good. Richie Porte is now driving. He's racing a GC race as well as the stage race. Adam Yates just hanging on.
He is just hanging on. Adam Yates needs to close that gap if he possibly can, as well, Poels and Henao just pilot themselves around the outside of Richie Porte and bring it all back together. There's an attack on the left-hand side of the road by
Rodriguez.
Joaquim Rodriguez, and Adam Yates is having a little bit of his work cut out now just to close that gap. Can he get there? The white helmet and blue jersey of Aru looks around to see where he is. Meanwhile, Dan Martin's attack is stuck, and I couldn't see the yellow jersey group in the distance there, so it looks as though he is bridging across to Romain Bardet.
This is a great move by Dan Martin, and in the past times we've seen him attack, he's gone caught and he's actually paid for it, but that hasn't stopped him. You'd think that maybe he'd have waited a bit longer, and each time he tries, and this time it's sticking. So we've heard from him that he's never felt this good at the end of a race, and it's Joaquim Rodriguez, his nemesis. Adam Yates is getting distance now slightly. So Adam Yates...
First sign of weakness in the high mountains from the white jersey, who has hung in there every single time that the mountains have cried and thrown down the massive challenge on the Tour de France, and he is definitely losing contact with that group of favourites. He's losing contact to Quintana, Aru, the yellow jersey, to Rodriguez, to Dan Martin and Romain Bardet. Martin's being pulled back, but this man is suffering even more than Adam Yates, and that is hugely significant for Adam Yates. The man who started the day in second place won't be in second place at the end of the day. Bauke Mollema going backwards. That's the 3 kilometres banner that he has in front of him, so he's lost a huge amount of time, and once again Dan Martin's attack has come back.
Meinke's there as well, so that's a great rider, and we've got to remember there's also the white jersey competition, so we don't want, Adam Yates wouldn't want to be losing too much time to Meinke's, who's this is probably one of the best days we've seen from him as well at the mountains, being that far up the front. But look at Chris Froome still battling on his teammate's bike, and there's no wonder that he's not looking as effortless as he normally does.
Well, that's right. Romain Bardet is hanging on. It looked for a while as if when Diego Rosa was on the front and bringing it back, it wouldn't be long before they caught him. But he is still there, and so too is Wout Poels. And he once again moves to the front and restores order as Dan Martin gets pulled in.
It's like he simply polices that group. He goes around, he checks on his team leader, he then goes back up. Chris Froome now moving back, taking his rightful place on his teammate's wheel, Wout Poels, and that's them just showing their authority. So you guys can keep attacking, but if you do, we're not going to slow it down. We want to to control this. And Wout Poels, look at them. The two of them are there. And Chris Froome on his teammate's bike. Wout Poels making sure that his team leader's okay. They're having a discussion. They're not interested in chasing down Bardet. That's not their job. They're GC riders. Now, it's all those riders behind. If they want to win the stage or put time into each other and mix up the GC, they have to attack.
Porter's attacked. Romain Bardet has attacked, Dan Martin has attacked, but the man whose team has done all the work, Fabio Aru, has been unable to attack, and now Adam Yates is in a... Well, he's recovered, he's got back on, and I wonder how much that was due to the way that Poels and Froome got to the front and slowed the pace as Richie Porte now goes again, and Quintana is alert to his acceleration once more. Porte and Quintana, the next two riders through 2 kilometres to attack.
2 kilometres is where he expects that's Richie Porte's kind of go time. I think he knows he can do that effort. 42 seconds is a big ask though, but we'll see. Richie Porte and Nairo Quintana, if there's 2 riders in the world that can do it when they're at their best, it's those 2.
Oh, Adam Yates had just got back on when it all exploded at the front again, but he's there. Adam Yates is in contact with the back of that group of favourites, and Aru now finally counters, and Aru goes off the front, and pretty soon, if he can, he'll get across to Quintana and Porte, and Adam Yates is just battling with every fibre of muscle in his body to maintain contact and lock onto that yellow jersey group. That's where the race is, and at the front it's happening for Fabio Aru. Finally, he's left it to within the last 2 kilometres to show what today was all about. We expected it much earlier, and look at that, Richie Porte is not letting him get away, so I don't think this is going to stick from Fabio Aru. Meanwhile, Romain Bardet has 43 seconds advantage over all of these riders.
Well, Aru has to push this to the line now. If he wants to move up on GC or even stand a chance of winning the stage, then he has to try. Look at Adam Yates. It's like he's found a little second win, just having that little moment of respite where we saw Wout Poels and Chris Froome almost block the road and slow it all down. Then that's when Adam Yates managed to regain contact. And now it seems like he's recovered because it had been an extremely demanding few Ks into the bottom of the climb. And he'd also, let's not forget, had that hard bit at the beginning of the day. Meanwhile, Romain Bardet, 39 seconds he has in the yellow jersey group. Rui Costa was still in between. Fabio Aru, Richie Porte can't bring Fabio Aru back.
Well, don't forget there are time bonuses available at the finish line for the winner and for second place and for third place as Adam Yates continues to hold on to the coattails of that group. Great ride from Yates, great defensive ride. He's been put through the mill today, already had to chase on once to maintain contact in the flat roads leading up to this climb, and he is holding on. He's exploiting the fact that this man is having an absolutely dreadful day, and he is riding himself right off the podium at the moment. He has lost over 2 minutes now to the group of the Maillot Jaune, the yellow jersey. Bauke Mollema in deep trouble on this climb. And Fabio Aru gets past Rui Costa, thrashing himself from side to side on that bike in his characteristic style, but he's not really getting clear of that group of the yellow jersey. Meanwhile, under 1 kilometre to go for Romain Bardet, who could, at the end of the day, improve his position by something like 45 seconds if he can hold on to his advantage, take the win, and take the 10-second time bonus.
And that's Alejandro Valverde who's riding for Nairo Quintana. They'll know that Adam Yates is in trouble, and also that Mollema is having a disastrous day. So they've got to control this, and they've got to try and put as much time into Yates and Mollema as possible, because that would put Nairo Quintana on the podium. He's sitting in 4th place overall. Valverde knows that. Aru has now gone his own little race, but I don't think Valverde's oblivious to him. He just wants to put time into Yates and Mollema.
And they haven't reached the Flamme Rouge just yet. Now Fabio Aru gets swept up by Alejandro Valverde, and he is the next rider to be swallowed up, and that is the first sign that the yellow jersey is finding it a little bit hard here. Once again, Wout Poels just looks over and checks how his team leader is doing, and a little gap opens up.
And it's Wout Poels again. He's just going to close that as much as he can. He doesn't want to accelerate with it. Normally Chris Froome has no problem with those accelerations, but he's got with him Wout Poels, who is one of the strongest. Look, he just brings it back at his own pace because Chris Froome's not on his own bike. He's had that crash. He hasn't got that zing that he normally has.
Louis Meikes is flying. He's on Quintana's wheel. Alejandro Valverde leading up the Colombian. A much better day for Nairo Quintana. And Chris Froome shakes his head, but he's still there. 800 metres to go. That's only a tiny gap between him and the Quintana group. And Richie Porte has paid for that acceleration, and he's going backwards. The final 200 metres, by the way, of this climb is insanely steep. So the climbing is not over, and that's the point where Bardet very soon will reach, and it's going to really sting. But I think Bardet is looking at a stage win now. I don't think they're going to get to him. We've lost track of just where he is on the road relative to the others. We haven't had a time check for a while, but Bardet, yeah, thumbs up. He's hearing it on the team radio that he is going to get a win on the Tour de France, and he's going to make a statement as well in the general classification. All France wanted him to do this. He's going to win on the last uphill finish of the Tour de France, right up here in a valley overlooking Mont Blanc itself, the highest point in Europe, and this is a high point for Romain Bardet's young, developing and increasingly impressive career. A brilliant move on a descent and then executed on the climb. He can do both outstandingly well. He gets out of his saddle on this nasty kick right to the line. Still got 100 metres or so to go, Romain Bardet, but he won't be feeling the pain as he takes the applause and the cheers to the delight of this French crowd. What matters, though, as he crosses the line and takes the win and the 10 seconds time bonus, is what the clock will do. What position will this man end up in at the end of the day? What advantage? He needs to keep riding. Yeah. He doesn't want to unzip here. He's got a podium to think about. He could well be moving himself into second place at the end of the day. He takes the win. He stops the clock. And now let's have a look at the race. Well, it has come back as Bardet slowed up slightly to enjoy the moments. The gap is not going to be all that it might have been. Rodriguez heads the best of the rest up this nasty finish to this climb. Joaquim Rodriguez has had a really good day. He too at one point was distanced, gapped, had to chase back on. Alejandro Valverde finishes in third. Those men sweep up the time bonuses. Louis Mike is in fourth, Quintana in fifth. Little gaps opening up to Fabio Aru and Dan Martin, and the yellow jersey, uncharacteristically on this Tour de France, has suffered. Now, where is the white jersey of Adam Yates? He is the next man as Chris Froome just closes pats Wout Poels on the back and congratulates his teammate for another brilliant ride. Here's Richie Porte, he's lost time, and there is the white jersey of Adam Yates, and he is going to come in, well, nearly a minute down on Romain Bardet, and if you add in the time bonuses, that is over 1 minute that Bardet has made up on Adam Yates. Warren Barguil's the next man in, and Bauke Mollema is still nowhere to be seen.
Well, Romain Bardet, he had 41 seconds. He was 41 seconds behind Adam Yates. He was 20 seconds behind Nairo Quintana. So he's moved up into second place because Bauke Mollema is a long way back.
Romain Bardet finds himself at the end of today, we think, in second place on the Tour de France. And who would have predicted that at the beginning of the day? A great stage win. But that is really only half the story, because this is a proper GC achievement for Romain Bardet. He missed out on a podium place in 2014 when Jean-Christophe Perrault and Thibaut Pinot filled those podium places for France. But this is brilliant from Bardet. And this is just a picture of misery for Bauke Mollema, still out there on the road as his podium place ticks away from him, and any faint hope that he might have had of holding on to second has been extinguished in the rain when he came to grief. Bitter for the man from the Netherlands, and he's still got plenty of climbing to do.
It's a disaster for him.
He's given up, effectively. There's not much he can do about it now. That's gone.
But that ride by Romain Bardet was truly exceptional. When we see what he did in that descent, we've seen him do it dry descents. He leaves everybody behind. He's attempted it a couple of times on this race and it hasn't quite got the gap. This time he did it in the middle of the descent on a wet descent. Everyone who tried to keep up with him crashed, and then he got across, and not only that, he could then actually keep it going all the way to the finish line, which, when we saw the amount of attacks and the movements going on in the yellow jersey group, is simply an excellent performance.
It was mind-blowing from Romain Bardet, a brilliant ride. And look at the crowd appreciating that as well. Fantastic amphitheatre here on the slopes of Le Betex, this climb that he's going to remember for the rest of his life. He really announced himself here, Romain Bardet. We know all about his promise, but that is delivery. Is he going to be the first Frenchman since Bernardino one day to win the Tour de France? And do you know what? He's got one more day in the Alps with the descent into Morzine tomorrow to see what he can do.
Yeah, the race isn't over, that's for sure. And Romain Bardet, what the future has for him, is very much like Adam Yates.
The clouds of Mont Blanc have delivered a wonderful race.
And it's those clouds that have really thrown the cat among the pigeons on this race. We believe Romain Bardet is up to second, Nairo Quintana probably up to third, Bauke Mollema and Adam Yates off the podium as things stand, because as you can see, Bauke Mollema is still struggling up the final climb on his own. Viciously steep, that final stretch to the line as the dribs and drabs of the original break and the yellow jersey group come in. Mollema still to round that corner. We will take a break and we will wrap it all up when we come back. There's the winner of the day, the first French winner of this year's race, just when we thought we weren't going to get one. And he hasn't only won the stage as some kind of consolation, he's moved himself up to second place overall. Sensational ride in the rain by Romain Bardet. He was the big winner of the day. This was the big loser, the sad sight of Bauke Mollema. He came down once, he was delayed behind another crash, and he was bereft of teammates as he ground his way up, having lost a lot of time. He is well off the podium, 4:25 down on the winner. Now, let's take a look at the stage result. Romain Bardet won it. Rodriguez was at 23 seconds. Alejandro Valverde the same time. So was Louis Meintjes gaining time on Adam Yates in the Best Young Rider competition. Nairo Quintana at 26 seconds. That's important. Fabio Aru at 28 along with Dan Martin. Wout Poels, a brilliant ride from him to nurse his leader home. Chris Froome came in 36 seconds down alongside his teammate. Richie Porte lost time after his attack at 53 seconds. Now, that's what's happened to the GC today. Chris Froome is leading. 4:11 down is Romain Bardet. Nairo Quintana is up onto the third step of the podium, ahead of Adam Yates, who has slipped behind him by 9 seconds. Richie Porte is fifth at 5:17. Aru sixth at around 6 minutes. Alejandro Valverde at 6:20. Louis Meintjes at 7:02. Dan Martin at 7:10. And the man who was second this morning, Bauke Mollema, now 10th at 7 minutes 42. And that is what the rain can do to what looked like a fairly settled picture. Not settled at all. One of the men who launched attacks, although it didn't do him much good in the end on the final climb, was Dan Martin. He's speaking to Daniel Friebe.
Dan, it looked absolutely treacherous out there, particularly on the last descent. Just how slippery and how dangerous was it?
Honestly, I saw these guys crashing, so obviously we were a bit more careful, but we got the best tyres in the world, you know, we got specialised tyres. I didn't have a problem, you know, touch wood, I'll probably fall off tomorrow after having said that, but it's, no, I felt really good on the downhills, and I just stayed relaxed all day, and the guys did a great job of helping me best they could, and I just had really good legs. I mean, as I said before, it's pot luck. It seems to be pot luck as you wake up with a good day, and today I had a good day, and it's looking forward to tomorrow now.
And one of these days, one of your attacks is going to stick, isn't it? And you're going to time it just right.
Yeah, I mean, I had a feeling we were going for the stage. I didn't really know, and I knew that Bardet was just up the road. And when there was no teammates left, I could see that Chris was a little bit after his crash, he was a little bit sore. So I just thought maybe I attack and everybody looks at each other because I'm a bit further back. There was no interest to chase me, but obviously there was interest, you know. So it's I think it was, I don't know who it was, but I think Meintjes and Rodriguez chased me back, you know. So again, it comes back down to that GC game, that 9th and 11th chased me, and it's like, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I had a good go, and then settled back in the wheels, and yeah, tried to hold on to the finish.
Do you think the GC doesn't do your performance justice?
I've lost time down to experience, you know, and that comes with learning. And yeah, next year hopefully we'll come back stronger. I mean, I lost a fair amount of time in the time trials, and yeah, I'm definitely among the best guys in the climbs, even at this late stage in the race, you know. So that's something, that's a big improvement. And now I just got to go away this winter and work on the time trial, and and just keep doing what I'm doing. So I think I've learned this race that I can ride GC in the Tour de France.
Cheers, Dan. Thank you.
He can ride GC, and he's still in the top 10 and put in a couple of good attacks today. Now then, we will take a break. Afterwards, we hope we'll be speaking to the man who finished on his teammate's bike, Chris Froome. Well, we said at the top of the show that perhaps it was only the weather that could really interrupt Chris Froome's serene progress towards Paris in the yellow jersey, and it interrupted it like that. Nasty looking heavy fall, although his speed carried him into a slide, and his speed actually might have helped him escape further injury. He didn't get his own bike back between there and the finish, so he was nursed all the way up the finishing straight by Wout Poels, who's perhaps been Sky's most valuable player so far on this tour, and he gave him a well-deserved pat on the shoulder with what remaining strength he had as the two of them crossed the finish line. So Froome still leads, and in fact his lead has gone out today because Bauke Mollema had a worse day than he did. Romain Bardet is up to second place now, 4 minutes 11 seconds behind the leader. Nairo Quintana is on to the third step of the podium at 4:27 as Adam Yates slips off it down at 4:36. Then it's Richie Porte at 5:17, Fabio Aru at 6 minutes, Alejandro Valverde, Louis Meintjes, Dan Martin and Bauke Mollema. Richie Porte had a good dig. He ended up 16 seconds further back from Chris Froome than he was this morning, but he gave it a go. He's been speaking to Daniel.
Richie, the problem started really with the crash, didn't it? Tell us what happened there.
I mean, as soon as the day started, I felt I had too much tyre pressure. And as soon as it started to rain, the next thing you know, you're sliding down the road on your belly. But I still gave it my all in the last bit there. I was struggling for traction there, but I think everybody was as soon as you got out of the saddle. But it's just one of those days. I mean, quite a lot of guys slapped off there too. So you know, it's a bit disappointing, but we'll see what tomorrow brings.
And it was a long chase to get back on. How much did that affect you on the final climb?
Not too much really. I think it more affected my teammates. There's no excuses really. It was the crash wasn't too bad, but might be a bit sore tomorrow, but I'm looking forward to the Duplan.
And the race for the podium's hotting up now.
Oh yeah, I think it's going to be hard for me now, but I've had my ups and downs here, and you know, I think for next year I can take away quite a lot of confidence.
Thanks, Richie. Cheers.
Well, the fact that Richie Porte's already looking forward to next year tells you all you need to know about his hopes for the remainder of this race. Jens Vogt joins us again. Jens, he was talking about tyre pressures there. All it takes is a little bit of rain and the race completely changes.
Yes, it is. Tyre pressure actually is a crucial factor for this kind of stages. And if you look at the weather forecast in the mornings, you should actually adjust to the situation. You'd rather have a little too less than too much, because it becomes incredibly slippery with too much air pressure in the tyres.
Yeah. Now, there is Adam Yates. He's lost time to Louis Meintjes in the white jersey, but he's got a decent lead in that. Started the day at 2:59, hasn't lost too much of that, so he's still looking good for white in Paris. But Jens, he has slipped off the podium today, as has Bauke Mollema.
Well, Adam Yates only is, as far as I remember, 9 seconds behind the podium spot, so it's not totally over. But Bauke Mollema, he lost a lot of time. He is really the most unlucky rider of today, or of the Tour de France almost. He is not even close to top 3 anymore, so yeah, that's a bitter day for him.
Yeah. OK, well, we'll hopefully get a word with Adam Yates once he gets down off the podium. Same thing with Chris Froome, who actually hasn't gone up to receive his jersey yet. So we'll take a break and hopefully hear from them both on the other side of it. Welcome back. We don't want to overdo replays of crash pictures, but they were the story of the day, and that one, Jens, the first nasty one with Pierre Rolland.
Yes, that was just a signal of what is to come. Here we already see the next crash, and in a second you can 3 riders from Trek Segafredo being hauled up by this crash. Bauke Mollema starting to losing time here already. You can see it here again in the replay, and painful looking crash. It's never good to crash on a wet descent.
No. And then on the chase back, he loses a teammate who just fails to take the bend altogether.
Yeah, they overshoot the corner, couldn't brake. At least he didn't crash, stayed safe. But yes, one teammate lost for Bauke Mollema.
Yeah, that's the big one as far as the general classification race was concerned. And this is something, you know, if you're the only guy in your team and in the peloton on an asymmetric chain ring, you can take another guy's bike, but you're not going to have the same chain.
That is true. So that changed your whole rhythm of pedaling. And the lesson he learned, never cross a white line anymore in his life.
Yeah. Romain Bardet, the stage winner. Nairo Quintana looking like he's in pain, but moving up to third overall on the podium as things stand with a 9-second lead over Adam Yates. And there is Chris Froome, at least showing that his shoulder isn't so badly hurt that he can't lift a hand to thank his teammate Wout Poels for getting him up the final climb. So there is what today's stage has done to the top of the GC. Froome amazingly having increased his lead because Bauke Mollema has disappeared off the radar. Romain Bardet is at 4 minutes 11, Nairo Quintana at 4:27, Adam Yates 4:36, Richie Porte 5:17, then it's Aru, Valverde, Meintjes, Dan Martin and Bauke Mollema. Now, Chris Froome has been up on the podium. You can see it's not so much his shoulder he perhaps has to worry about, but his right leg or his right knee. He's got a lot of strapping on there, perhaps some ice, but he is in yellow and he's sort of walking okay. And he did speak when he came down. Let's hear from him.
Chris, can you tell us what happened basically on that descent before the final climb?
Yeah, well, it's ironic really. I was trying to stay up front, just trying to stay safe and out of trouble, and I think I just hit one of the white lines on the road and just lost my front wheel.
Major fright. How are you? How are you physically?
Yeah, I'm okay. I mean, I'm lucky, nothing seriously injured. Just lost a bit of skin, obviously, and banged my knee a bit. But really, I mean, today this is the kind of day that I feel grateful that I've got that 4-minute advantage. I could fall back on that a little bit, and obviously it was great for me to have teammates all the way up until the finish there. Wout in particular, all the guys. I mean, it was a great team effort today, and just feels good to be one day closer now to Paris.
You've always said that the Tour was never won until the finish line in Paris.
Yeah, and today shows exactly why. I mean, a crash like that today, I'm really grateful. Obviously, nothing seriously injured, but it could have gone either way there. And yeah, I mean, never a quiet day on the Tour.
You finished on Geraint Thomas's bike, that's correct?
Yeah, that's right. I knew the car was quite a while back, and my bike, I could see it wasn't rideable after the crash, and thanks a lot to Geraint for his bike. Yeah, rode that to the finish. That was all right.
I suppose you're a bit worried before tomorrow's stage. It's going to be another very, very difficult stage, especially in your condition.
Yeah, certainly. Tomorrow's going to be hard. Tomorrow's going to be really hard. I'm sure I'm going to be a bit sore and stiff after today, but hopefully I can rely on my teammates and just one last push to get through tomorrow's stage now. Thanks.
Well, he relied on his teammates today, didn't he? Finishing on Geraint Thomas's bike, nursed up the final climb by Wout Poels, but he's still in the yellow jersey. In fact, he's increased his lead. The question is, what kind of state is he going to be in for tomorrow's stage? We'll hopefully have more news for you on the highlights at 7 o'clock.